When Michael Jordan stepped out of his luxury car on that freezing November night in Chicago, he had no idea he was about to meet a man who would change his life forever. A homeless veteran, sleeping on cardboard in a dark alley, clutching a worn military jacket. Most people would have walked right past, but Michael Jordan stopped. And what happened next is one of the most beautiful stories you'll ever hear. But here's what nobody expected. This wasn't just any homeless veteran. This man was carrying a secret, a photograph hidden in his pocket, a past that connected to someone Michael would soon help him find. And when the truth finally came out 3 months later, it would shock everyone involved. This is the true story of Thomas Bennett, a Desert Storm hero who lost everything, a father who disappeared from his daughter's life for 20 years, a man who thought he was too broken to ever go home, and the basketball legend who refused to give up on him. You need to watch this entire video to understand what Michael Jordan really did that night, because it wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about charity. What he did was so much more powerful than that. He gave Thomas something that money can't buy, something that would ripple out and change hundreds of lives. But first, you need to know how dark things had gotten for Thomas, how a war hero ended up sleeping in an alley, how a loving father became a stranger to his own daughter, and how one cold November night would be the beginning of the most incredible comeback story you've ever heard. This is the story of a homeless veteran, a basketball legend, and the daughter who never stopped hoping her father would come home. Stay with me until the end, because the way this story unfolds will absolutely amaze you. And it all started with 5 simple words Michael Jordan said when he found Thomas in that alley. Let me take you back to that night in Chicago, where our story begins. Michael Jordan pulled his cap lower over his eyes as he stepped out of the sleek black car. The November wind cut through downtown Chicago like a knife, carrying with it the smell of roasted chestnuts and car exhaust. He waved off his driver. "I'll walk back to the hotel," Michael said. "Need to clear my head." The driver hesitated. "Sir, it's getting dark and—" "I'll be fine, Marcus. Go home to your family." Michael watched the taillights disappear into the evening traffic. At 62 years old, he still couldn't get used to the constant attention, the cameras, the requests. Sometimes he just needed to be invisible, to walk the streets like any other man thinking about his day. He stuffed his hands deep into his coat pockets and started walking. The business meeting had run long, something about endorsement deals and brand partnerships, numbers on spreadsheets, profit margins, market demographics. It all felt so far away from the game he loved, from the squeak of sneakers on hardwood and the swish of the net. The streets grew quieter as he turned down a side street. Streetlights flickered on, casting orange pools of light on the sidewalk. Michael barely noticed where he was going, lost in thought about his own children, his legacy, the years that had somehow slipped past like water through his fingers. That's when he heard it, a cough. Harsh and rattling coming from the shadows of an alley near an old, abandoned basketball court. Michael slowed his pace. He'd walked past 1,000 homeless people in his life. You couldn't live in a city and not see them. Usually he donated to shelters, wrote checks to organizations. That was how you helped, right? From a distance through proper channels. But something made him stop this time. Maybe it was the basketball court, its chain-link fence rusted and bent, the hoop missing its net. Maybe it was the cold, too cold for anyone to be sleeping outside. Or maybe it was something he couldn't name, a pull he couldn't explain. Michael turned toward the alley. The man lay on flattened cardboard boxes, covered by newspapers and a thin blanket that had seen better days. But it was the jacket that caught Michael's attention, a military jacket, worn and faded but unmistakable. Even in the dim light, Michael could see the patches, the markings of service. The man coughed again and stirred. His eyes opened, squinting up at the figure blocking what little light reached his makeshift bed. "I'm not causing trouble," the man said, his voice rough as gravel. "I'll move along." "Stay where you are," Michael said, surprised by his own words. "I'm not here to move you." The man sat up slowly, wincing as he did. He was probably in his 50s, though it was hard to tell. Life on the streets aged you fast. His face was weathered and lined, a gray beard covering his jaw, but his eyes, even in the darkness, Michael could see his eyes were sharp, aware, intelligent. "You need something?" the man asked, suspicious. Michael crouched down, his knees protesting the movement. "That jacket, you serve." The man's hand went protectively to the worn fabric. "Desert Storm, long time ago." "What's your name?" Thomas Bennett. He studied Michael's face, trying to place him. Do I know you? Maybe I'm Michael. Thomas stared for a long moment, then recognition flickered across his features. His eyes widened slightly. Michael Jordan. That's me. What are you doing in an alley talking to me? Thomas pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. Shouldn't you be somewhere fancy? Some restaurant or penthouse? Should be, but I'm here. Michael gestured to the jacket again. Desert Storm, that was 91. 90 to 91, served 14 months over there. Sergeant, 3rd Armored Division. Michael nodded slowly. His mind was racing, trying to understand why he'd stopped, why he was still crouching in a cold alley instead of walking back to his warm hotel room. You hungry, Thomas? I'm fine. That wasn't what I asked. Thomas met his eyes. There was pride there, battered but not broken. I could eat. Coffee? There's a diner 2 blocks from here, still open. I don't take charity from famous people so they can feel good about themselves. Thomas's voice had an edge now. Good. I don't give charity to feel good about myself. Michael stood, his knees cracking. I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I could use the company. You interested or not? Thomas studied him for what felt like a full minute. Snow had started to fall, light flakes drifting down like ash. Finally, Thomas gathered his belongings, a backpack that looked like it might fall apart, the thin blanket, the precious jacket. He stood, and Michael realized the man was tall, maybe 6'3". Even under the layers of worn clothing, you could see he'd once been athletic. They walked in silence to the diner, an all-night place called Jimmy's that served breakfast 24 hours a day. The few patrons inside looked up when they entered, some recognizing Michael, others focused on Thomas with that mixture of pity and disgust that homeless people knew too well. Michael chose a booth in the back, away from prying eyes. A waitress brought coffee without being asked, giving Thomas a skeptical look before walking away. Thomas wrapped both hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into his fingers. His hands were large, scarred, but steady. Athlete's hands, Michael thought. Even through the dirt and rough skin, you could see strength there. So, Thomas said, taking a careful sip of coffee, what's this really about? You trying to save my soul? Get a good story for a talk show. No talk shows, no cameras, just coffee. Michael poured cream into his own cup. You said you served. You said it was a long time ago. What happened between then and now? Thomas laughed, a bitter sound. That's a long story. I've got time. Why do you care? Michael was quiet for a moment, watching steam rise from his coffee. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because I saw that jacket and thought about all the guys who served and came home to nothing. Maybe because that could have been me if I hadn't been able to play basketball. Maybe just because it's cold and you're here and I'm here, and that seems like enough of a reason. Thomas searched his face, looking for dishonesty, for angles. Apparently finding none, he relaxed slightly. I played basketball too, Thomas said quietly. Long time ago, high school in Detroit, was pretty good actually. Yeah, Michael leaned forward. How good? Good enough to have scouts looking at me, good enough to maybe get a scholarship. Thomas stared into his coffee. But my dad died my senior year. Vietnam vet, cancer got him. I decided to serve instead, thought it would honor him. Did it? For a while, Thomas's jaw tightened. Then I came home and everything fell apart. The waitress returned and Michael ordered food for both of them without asking what Thomas wanted. Eggs, bacon, pancakes, hash browns, toast. Enough for 2 hungry men or one who hadn't eaten properly in days. There's more to your story, Michael said when the waitress left. Thomas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A photograph, creased and worn, protected in a plastic sleeve. His fingers hovered over it, and for a moment Michael thought he'd show it to him. But Thomas pulled it back, clutching it against his chest. This, Thomas whispered, his voice cracking, this is why I can't go back, why I shouldn't go back. Go back where? Thomas didn't answer. He just held the photograph like it was the most precious thing in the world or the most painful. Outside, the snow fell harder, blanketing the city in white. Inside the diner, 2 men sat across from each other, one famous beyond measure, one invisible to the world. Between them, unspoken, was a story waiting to unfold. A story that would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Michael looked at Thomas's hand, still protecting that mysterious photograph, and made a decision he didn't fully understand. He wasn't walking away from this man. Not tonight, not yet. The food arrived in steaming plates that covered half the table. Thomas stared at it like he wasn't sure it was real. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up his fork. "Go ahead," Michael said, starting on his own eggs. "It's just food." Thomas ate slowly at first, then faster, like a man remembering what it meant to be hungry and have that hunger satisfied. Michael watched without comment, sipping his coffee and looking out the window at the falling snow. When Thomas finally slowed down, wiping his mouth with a paper napkin, some of the hardness in his face had softened. Fed and warm, he looked more human, less like a shadow. "Thank you," Thomas said quietly. "Don't mention it." Michael refilled both their coffee cups from the pot the waitress had left. "You said you played basketball in Detroit. When was that?" "Late 80s. I was a senior in 89. Thomas leaned back in the booth, his eyes distant with memory. "Cass Technical High School. I was a forward, 6'3", could shoot from anywhere inside 20 feet. We made it to the state finals my junior year." "That's impressive." "Yeah, well," Thomas's smile was sad. "I thought I was going somewhere. Had a coach from Michigan State watching me, another from University of Detroit. They talked about full rides, about playing Division I ball." He paused. "Then my dad got sick." Michael stayed quiet, letting Thomas find his words. "Dad was a Vietnam vet, Marines. He never talked much about the war, but you could see it in him sometimes. The way he'd jump at loud noises, the nightmares." Thomas traced patterns in the condensation on his water glass. "Cancer took him fast. 3 months from diagnosis to funeral. I was 17. "I'm sorry." "After he died, Mom couldn't handle the house payments, the bills. My younger sister needed things. Basketball suddenly seemed selfish, you know, like a game when real life was falling apart." Thomas met Michael's eyes. "So I joined the Army. Figured I'd serve like my dad did, send money home, maybe go to college later on the GI Bill." "That's honorable," Michael said. "A lot of kids wouldn't make that choice." "Honorable?" Thomas tasted the word like it was bitter. "I thought so too back then." The diner was nearly empty now, just a truck driver at the counter and an elderly couple in a corner booth. The waitress refilled the trucker's coffee and ignored everyone else. Outside, Chicago had transformed into a snow globe, white and clean and quiet. "Tell me about Desert Storm," Michael said. Thomas was quiet for so long that Michael thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking, his voice low and measured. "We deployed in November 1990. I was 20 years old, thought I was a man, but I was really just a kid with a rifle. Spent months in Saudi Arabia training, waiting, wondering if we'd actually fight or just sit in the desert until Saddam Hussein got smart." "But you did fight." "February 91. Ground war lasted 4 days, but those were the longest days of my life." Thomas's hands had stopped moving, frozen around his coffee cup. "I did my job, followed orders, kept my squad alive. We pushed through the desert, secured objectives, came home with medals and handshakes and parades." "You sound like you don't believe that." "I believe I served. I believe I did what I was told." Thomas's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "But coming home, that's when the real war started." Michael leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "The nightmares came first. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours without waking up in a cold sweat, thinking I was back there. Then the jumpiness, every car backfire, every door slam made me hit the ground. I couldn't explain it to anyone. How do you tell people that you're terrified of fireworks? That you can't go to a 4th of July cookout because the sounds make you want to crawl into a hole?" "PTSD," Michael said. "Didn't know what to call it back then. Just knew I was broken and didn't know how to fix myself." Thomas finally moved, pulling his hands away from the coffee to rub his face. "But I tried. I really tried." "What happened?" Thomas reached into his jacket again, his fingers brushing that protected photograph. This time he didn't pull it out, just touched it like a talisman. "I met Patricia in 1993. She was a nurse at the VA hospital where I was trying to get help. Beautiful woman, patient, kind. Saw something in me worth saving." His voice softened with the memory. "We got married in 94. I was working construction, going to therapy, taking my medications. For a while, I thought I'd made it through. Thought I'd beaten whatever was broken inside me." But you didn't, Michael said gently. Nobody beats PTSD. You just learn to live with it if you're lucky. Thomas's jaw clenched. We had a daughter in 1995, Sarah, named her after Patricia's grandmother. She was perfect, Mr. Jordan. Absolutely perfect. Tiny hands, big eyes, this smile that could light up a room. Michael heard the past tense, the pain in every word. He waited. I loved being a father. Loved coming home from work and having this little girl run to me yelling, "Daddy." Loved reading her bedtime stories and teaching her to ride a bike and taking her to her first basketball game. Thomas smiled, but it was the saddest smile Michael had ever seen. I took her to see you play, actually. 1997, United Center. She was 8 years old. Yeah, it was her birthday. She wore this Bulls jersey that was way too big for her, number 23, dragging down to her knees. She didn't care, she was so happy. Thomas's voice cracked. You were playing the Knicks. Bulls won by 12. After the game, we got ice cream and she talked about basketball the whole way home. Said she wanted to play just like Michael Jordan. She sounds wonderful. She was. Thomas covered his face with his hands. She was, and I destroyed it all. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Michael didn't push, didn't prod. He just waited the way a good listener waits, giving space for pain to find words. Patricia died in 2001, Thomas finally continued, his voice muffled behind his hands. Car accident, drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. He lowered his hands and his eyes were red but dry, like he'd cried all his tears years ago. Sarah was 13. And I was supposed to be the strong one, the parent who held it together. But you couldn't. I fell apart. The PTSD got worse without Patricia there to help me through the bad nights. Started drinking to sleep, drinking to forget, drinking to make it through each day. Lost my construction job. Couldn't pay the mortgage. Patricia's sister, Margaret, kept offering to help, but I was too proud, too stubborn. Thomas picked up his fork and set it down again, a nervous gesture. The nightmares got worse. One night I had a bad one, dreamed I was back in Iraq under fire watching friends die. I woke up screaming, threw furniture, punched a hole in the wall. Sarah saw the whole thing. She was terrified of her own father. Michael's chest tightened. He'd seen fear in people's eyes before, but imagining a child looking at her father that way made him feel sick. Margaret took Sarah that night, said it was temporary just until I got help, but I knew the truth. I was dangerous, broken, no kind of father. Thomas finally pulled out the photograph but kept it face down on the table. I went to rehab, got sober, went to therapy, did everything they told me to do. But every time I thought about going back to Sarah, I remembered the fear in her eyes. So you didn't go back? Margaret petitioned for custody, said I was unfit. My lawyer said I could fight it, but what was I fighting for? To put Sarah through a custody battle, to make her choose between her aunt's stable home and her mess of a father. Thomas shook his head. I signed the papers, gave up my rights, told myself it was the right thing, the noble thing. When was this? 2003. Sarah was 15. Thomas's hand hovered over the photograph. I saw her one last time before I disappeared. Told her I was sick, that I needed to go away for treatment. Told her I loved her more than anything in the world. Promised I'd come back when I was better. But you never did. How could I? I was a coward who'd abandoned his daughter. What could I possibly say to her? Thomas finally flipped the photograph over, sliding it across the table to Michael. Michael picked it up carefully, handling it like the precious thing it was. 3 people smiled back at him from a sunny day. A beautiful woman with warm eyes. A young girl in an oversized Bulls jersey, grinning with missing front teeth. And Thomas, younger, healthier, whole, with his arm around both of them, looking happier than Michael had ever seen anyone look. On the back, in child's handwriting, "My hero daddy, love Sarah, age 8. Michael's throat tightened. She loved you. She loved who I was, not what I became. Thomas took the photo back, protective. After I signed away my rights, I just drifted. Odd jobs paid under the table, moved from city to city. Ended up back in Chicago about 5 years ago. Been on the streets for most of that time. You ever try to find out what happened to her, where she is now? Every day I want to, every single day." Thomas's hands shook as he slid the photograph back into its protective sleeve. "But what right do I have? I chose to leave. I chose to let her think I might come back someday. For all I know, she hates me. Or worse, she's forgotten me entirely. You don't know that. Don't I? Thomas looked up and Michael saw raw pain in his eyes. It's been 15 years, Mr. Jordan. 15 years of silence. She's 23 years old now. Probably has a life, maybe a career, possibly someone she loves. What am I supposed to do? Show up on her doorstep looking like this? He gestured to himself. Say, hey, remember me. I'm the dad who promised to come back and never did. Michael set down his coffee cup carefully. You ever think that maybe she wants to see you anyway? She's better off thinking I'm dead. Is that what you told her, that you were dead? No, I just disappeared. Thomas slumped in the booth. Margaret probably told her I was too sick to see her or that I'd moved away or something. I don't know, I never asked. So she's been living with not knowing for 15 years. The words hit Thomas like a physical blow. He flinched, then nodded slowly. I never thought about it that way. I thought I was sparing her pain. Or giving her a different kind of pain, Michael said quietly. The kind that comes from unanswered questions. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photograph still clutched in his hand. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The truck driver paid his bill and left. The elderly couple held hands across their table, comfortable in the silence of long companionship. I don't know how to come back from this, Thomas finally said. Don't know if I even should try. Michael finished his coffee and signaled for the check. You ever hear what I said to a reporter once? He asked me about missing shots, about failure. I told him I'd missed more than 9,000 shots in my career, lost almost 300 games. 26 times I'd been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I know the quote. Then you know the last part. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. Michael pulled out his wallet to pay. You failed, Thomas. You failed hard, but you're still here, still breathing, still capable of doing something different. Like what? Like stopping being dead while you're still alive. Michael stood up, leaving cash on the table. Come on. Thomas looked confused. Where are we going? Somewhere warm where you can sleep. Tomorrow we figure out the next step. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's a hotel room I'm already paying for, a shower you desperately need, and a chance to stop punishing yourself for one night. Michael's voice was firm but not unkind. You can go back to the street tomorrow if you want, but tonight you're coming with me. Thomas stood slowly, gathering his meager belongings. At the door he paused and looked back at Michael. Why are you doing this? Michael thought about the question, really thought about it. Because 20 years ago, someone asked me for an autograph at a charity game in Detroit. Young kid, maybe 17, serious eyes. He told me he was going to make his dad proud. I told him to never stop reaching for his dreams. Thomas's eyes widened with recognition and shock. I remember you, Thomas, Michael said softly. Took me a while, but I remember. You had a basketball you wanted me to sign. Told me your dad was sick. You remember that? Thomas's voice was barely a whisper. I meet a lot of people, most blend together, but you, I remember thinking you had something special in your eyes, determination, honor. Michael held the door open as snow swirled in. So when you asked me earlier why I stopped tonight, why I gave a damn about some homeless guy in an alley, that's why. Because I told you to never stop reaching, and somewhere along the way, you did. And I'll be damned if I walk away without at least trying to help you start reaching again. Thomas stood frozen on the sidewalk, snow gathering in his hair and beard, tears streaming down his weathered face. I stopped reaching, Mr. Jordan, he choked out. I stopped reaching a long time ago. Then maybe, Michael said, putting a hand on Thomas's shoulder, it's time to start again. They walked through the snowy Chicago night, two men carrying the weight of their pasts, moving toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the diner's lights flickered. Ahead of them, somewhere in the darkness, a daughter waited, not knowing her father was still alive, still searching, still hoping for redemption. But Thomas didn't know that yet. That revelation would have to wait for morning. The hotel lobby gleamed with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Thomas stopped at the entrance, snow melting off his worn jacket onto the expensive carpet. I can't go in there, he said, looking down at his dirty clothes. Look at me. I'm looking. I see a veteran who served his country. Now come on. Michael walked through the doors like he owned the place, which for all Thomas knew, maybe he did. The desk clerk's professional smile faltered when he saw Thomas, but one look from Michael Jordan silenced any objection. Within minutes, Thomas found himself in a suite on the 20th floor, staring at furniture that probably cost more than he'd earned in the past 5 years combined. Showers through there, Michael pointed. I'll have someone bring up some clothes. What size shoe are you? 13. Same as me, that makes it easy. Michael picked up the room phone. Take your time, get clean. There's a robe in the bathroom. We'll talk when you're ready. Thomas stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed. Mr. Jordan, I don't. Michael, just Michael. He dialed a number. And you don't have to say anything, just go shower. Trust me, you need it. Thomas managed a weak laugh and headed to the bathroom. When the door closed, he leaned against it, breathing hard. His reflection in the mirror shocked him. He barely recognized the man staring back. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, a beard that had grown wild and gray. When had he become this person? The shower was the best thing he'd felt in years. Hot water sluiced away layers of street grime, and he stood under the spray until his skin turned red. When he finally emerged, wrapped in a plush hotel robe, he found clothes laid out on the bed. Jeans, a sweater, fresh socks, new sneakers. Everything fit perfectly. Michael was sitting by the window looking out at the Chicago skyline. He changed into comfortable clothes, sweatpants, and a Bulls hoodie. He looked more human somehow, less like an icon and more like just a man. Feel better? Michael asked without turning around. Like a new person. Thomas sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. Then don't say it, just sit. Michael gestured to the chair across from him. We need to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow, I go back to my life. What life? Sleeping in alleys, digging through dumpsters. Michael's voice was sharp but not cruel. That's not living, Thomas. That's just not dying. Thomas flinched at the truth of it. What else can I do? Find your daughter. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Thomas shook his head violently. No, absolutely not. I told you. You told me you're afraid. I heard you. But being afraid and doing nothing are two different things. Michael leaned forward. You've been punishing yourself for 15 years. Don't you think that's long enough? You don't understand what I did. I understand you had PTSD and made mistakes. I understand you were grieving your wife and couldn't cope. I understand you thought leaving was protecting her. Michael's voice softened. But Thomas, you don't get to decide what she needs. You don't get to choose for her whether she wants to see you again. She won't want to see me. Maybe, maybe not. But she deserves the chance to make that choice. Thomas stood up and walked to the window, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. Below, the city sprawled in every direction, millions of people living their lives, connected to families and friends and futures. He disconnected himself from all of that. I wouldn't even know where to start, he said quietly. We start by finding her. I have people who can do that. Investigators, researchers. If Sarah Bennett exists, we'll find her. Thomas turned around. And then what? I just show up. Hi, honey, sorry I abandoned you for 15 years, but I'm clean now, so everything's okay. No, then we figure out the right way to approach her, carefully, respectfully. Michael stood and joined him at the window. But first, you need to be in a place where you're ready to see her, where you're not the man who just came out of that alley. You're talking about rehab, treatment. I'm talking about healing, really healing, not just surviving. Michael met his eyes. I can help with that too. Best facilities, best doctors, whatever you need. Thomas laughed bitterly. Why would you do all this for me? I told you, I remember that kid in Detroit who wanted to make his dad proud. Michael's voice was steady. But also because I've lost people too. My father was murdered in 1993, shot during a robbery, and I spent years wondering if things I'd done, my fame, my success, made him a target, wondering if I could have prevented it somehow. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? Wasn't yours, Michael shrugged. We carry guilt for things beyond our control, but the difference is your daughter is still alive. You still have a chance I'll never have. Don't waste it. Thomas felt something crack open in his chest, a wall he'd built brick by brick over 15 years. I'm scared, he whispered. Good. Fear means you care. It means it matters. Michael put a hand on his shoulder. But don't let fear be the thing that decides your life. They stood in silence for a while, two men looking out at a city of second chances and lost opportunities. I need to think, Thomas finally said. Fair enough. Think all night if you need to, but in the morning I want an answer. Are you ready to try, really try? Thomas nodded slowly. In the morning. Michael headed toward the door, then paused. There's food in the mini fridge. TV remote is on the table. Get some rest. Real rest in a real bed. After Michael left, Thomas stood alone in the luxury suite. He walked from room to room, touching surfaces, testing the softness of the bed, staring at himself in mirrors. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong here. But he didn't belong in that alley either. He pulled out the photograph of Sarah, Patricia, and his younger self, studied it under the lamp light. Sarah's missing tooth grin, Patricia's gentle smile, his own face full of hope and love and certainty that tomorrow would be better than today. My hero daddy, he read aloud from the back, loves Sarah. Did she still think that? Or had she grown up believing her hero had abandoned her? Thomas couldn't sleep, despite the comfortable bed. At 3 in the morning, he got dressed and took the elevator down to the lobby. Maybe he'd just walk, clear his head. The night clerk barely glanced at him as he headed for the doors. But when he stepped outside, he found Michael sitting on a bench near the entrance, wearing a heavy coat and drinking coffee from a travel mug. Figured you might try to run, Michael said calmly. Can't say I blame you. Thomas stopped. How long have you been sitting here? Couple hours. Michael took a sip of coffee. Want some? There's another cup here. Thomas sat down beside him, accepting the warm cup. The street was quiet at this hour, just a few taxis cruising past and the occasional night worker heading home. I used to sit in parking lots after games, Michael said. After everyone left, just sit in my car and think. People thought I was home celebrating or out partying, but really I was just trying to process everything. The pressure, the expectations, the constant eyes on me. That's different. You were at the top of the world. Was I? Or was I just a man trying to live up to an impossible image? Michael looked at him. Success doesn't make loneliness easier, Thomas. It just makes it quieter. Are you trying to tell me we're the same? I'm telling you we're both human, both flawed, both carrying regrets. Michael set down his coffee. Difference is, I learned something about failure that changed my life. What's that? That you can't erase it, can't undo it, can only move forward from it. Michael stood, stretching his legs. Come on, walk with me. I want to show you something. They walked through the empty Chicago streets, their breath fogging in the cold air. Michael led him to the old basketball court near where they'd first met, the one with the rusted fence and missing net. You know what I see when I look at this court? Michael asked. A mess, abandoned, forgotten. I see potential. Michael walked through the gate, his shoes crunching on broken glass. This court is broken, sure, but the bones are good. The concrete is solid. With some work, some care, some investment, this could be a place where kids learn to play, where someone discovers their love for the game, where second chances happen. Thomas understood the metaphor. I'm the broken court. We're all broken courts, Thomas. The question is whether we let someone help fix us, or we just keep rusting away. Michael picked up a deflated basketball from the weeds, tossing it from hand to hand. I've been thinking about this place since I saw you here, been thinking about what it could become. A community center. Maybe, or maybe just a good court where people can play, where veterans can come and shoot hoops and remember what it feels like to be part of something. Michael looked at him. Where a father and daughter could shoot baskets together if they wanted to. The image hit Thomas hard. Sarah in that oversized jersey taking shots while he rebounded for her, teaching her his moves, his tricks, watching her grow and improve and laugh. You're not playing fair, Thomas said, his voice thick. No, I'm not, because fair would be walking away and letting you disappear back into that alley, and I don't want to do that. Michael tossed him the deflated ball. Humor me. Pretend this ball has air. Show me your shot. What? Your shot, the one that had scouts watching you. Show me. Thomas held the deflated ball, feeling foolish. But something about the moment, the empty court, the early morning darkness, the snow still falling lightly, made him move to the three-point line or where it used to be. He went through the motions, muscle memory taking over. Bent knees, elbow in, follow through. The ball dropped from his hands without arc or spin, bouncing sadly on the cracked concrete. Again, Michael said. Thomas did it again, and again, and again. Each time his form got smoother, his movements more natural. The years fell away, and for brief moments he wasn't a homeless veteran. He was just a player taking shots. "You've still got it," Michael said. "Buried deep, but it's there." Thomas stopped, breathing hard. "What's the point of this?" "The point is that nothing is ever completely lost. Skills can be relearned. Relationships can be rebuilt. Lives can be reclaimed." Michael walked to center court. "But you have to want it, Thomas. You have to be willing to put in the work, take the risk, face the possibility of rejection." "And if she rejects me? If I find her and she doesn't want anything to do with me?" "Then at least you tried. At least she knows you didn't just forget her. At least you gave her the choice." Michael's voice was gentle. "But Thomas, I don't think she'll reject you. I think she's been waiting for you to come back just like you promised." "How can you know that?" "I can't, but I believe it. And sometimes belief is enough to take the first step." The sky was starting to lighten, dawn approaching. Thomas looked at the broken court, at Michael standing in the center like he belonged there, at the city waking up around them. "If I do this," Thomas said slowly, "if I try to find her and make things right, I don't know if I can handle failing again." "Then don't fail. Do the work, get healthy, prepare yourself. And when you're ready, when you're really ready, we'll find her together." Michael extended his hand. "What do you say? You ready to start reaching again?" Thomas stared at the offered hand. It represented everything he'd run from: hope, possibility, the terrifying chance of redemption. But it also represented everything he'd lost: purpose, connection, love. He thought about Sarah's face in that photograph, her missing tooth grin, her hero daddy. He thought about Patricia, who believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. He thought about his own father, the Vietnam vet who'd fought his own demons in silence. And he thought about the man he'd been before the war, before the loss, before the fear. That man had never run from anything. Thomas reached out and gripped Michael's hand. "I'm ready," he said. "I'm ready to try." Michael smiled, really smiled, and shook his hand firmly. "Good, then let's get to work." As they walked back toward the hotel, the sun broke over the horizon, casting long shadows behind them and painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in that city, Sarah Bennett was waking up, starting another day, not knowing that everything was about to change. Not knowing her father had finally stopped running. Not knowing that sometimes the longest journey isn't measured in miles, but in the courage it takes to come home. Thomas looked back once at the broken basketball court, already imagining what it could become. What they could all become if they were brave enough to try. The walk back was quiet, peaceful. They passed early morning workers heading to shift, delivery trucks making their rounds, a city coming to life. Thomas noticed things he hadn't seen in years: the way sunlight hit windows, the smell of bread from a bakery, the sound of birds despite the urban setting. It was like seeing the world for the first time, or maybe seeing it again after being blind. At the hotel entrance, Michael stopped. "Get some real sleep. Later today, we start making calls, finding Sarah, building your path back." "Michael," Thomas's voice caught. "That kid in Detroit, the one you signed the basketball for?" "Yeah. I still have that ball, kept it through everything, the war, the marriage, the fall. It's in a storage unit I haven't paid for in 3 years, probably gone now, but I kept it as long as I could." Thomas met his eyes. "You signed it, never stop reaching, MJ." I looked at those words every day until I couldn't anymore. Michael's jaw tightened with emotion. "Then maybe it's time you start looking at them again." Thomas nodded, unable to speak. As he rode the elevator back to the suite, he caught his reflection in the mirrored walls, clean, dressed, standing straight. He almost looked human again, almost looked like someone a daughter might recognize, almost looked like a father coming home. In his pocket, the photograph of Sarah and Patricia felt warm against his chest. "I'm coming back," he whispered to the image of his smiling daughter. "I promised I would, and I'm finally keeping that promise." The elevator doors opened, and Thomas stepped out into the hallway. Behind him, 15 years of running. Ahead of him, the hardest work of his life. And somewhere between the two, a chance at redemption that Michael Jordan had given him by simply stopping, seeing, and caring. By refusing to walk past a broken man and leave him in the dark. By remembering a promise made to a 17-year-old kid in Detroit who dreamed of making his father proud. Thomas entered the suite and finally slept, his dreams filled not with nightmares but with possibilities. With Sarah's face, older now but still smiling, with basketballs swishing through nets, with the words never stop reaching. And for the first time in 15 years, he believed he could actually do it. He could reach out and touch tomorrow. He could find his way back home. Thomas woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel windows. For a confused moment, he didn't know where he was. The softness of the bed, the clean sheets, the warmth, it all felt like a dream. Then he remembered. Michael Jordan, the diner, the promise. He sat up, his body aching in new ways. Sleeping on cardboard had been uncomfortable, but this softness made his muscles protest from years of tension finally releasing. He looked at the clock, 11:47 a.m. He'd slept for almost 6 hours straight, no nightmares, no waking in panic. When had that last happened? A knock at the door made him jump. "Thomas, you awake?" Michael's voice came through. "Yeah, give me a minute." He splashed water on his face, finger-combed his wet hair, and opened the door. Michael stood there with bags from a breakfast place, the smell of fresh food making Thomas's stomach growl. "Figured you'd be hungry." Michael entered and set the bags on the table. "Got bagels, fruit, coffee. Wasn't sure what you liked." "Anything's good." Thomas sat, still feeling awkward accepting so much help. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Michael scrolled through his phone between bites, making notes. Thomas watched him work, this man who could be anywhere doing anything but had chosen to spend his morning helping a homeless stranger. "I made some calls," Michael finally said, setting down his phone. "I've got a friend who runs a private investigation firm. Good people, discreet. They can help us find Sarah." Thomas's hand froze halfway to his mouth, bagel forgot. "That fast?" "That fast. But Thomas, before we start, I need to make sure you're really ready for this. Once we find her, once we know where she is and what she's doing, there's no going back to not knowing." "I understand." "Do you?" Michael leaned forward. "Because knowing is sometimes harder than wondering. What if we find out she's happy? What if she has a good life and seeing you disrupts that? What if she struggled and you realize you weren't there to help? Can you handle whatever we find?" Thomas set down the bagel, his appetite suddenly gone. He thought about Sarah at 8 years old in that Bulls jersey, then tried to imagine her at 23. What did she look like? What did she do? Was she happy? "I need to know," he said quietly. "Even if it hurts, even if she doesn't want to see me, I need to know she's okay." Michael studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, my guy needs some information. Full name, date of birth, last known address. Anything else you can remember." For the next hour, Thomas dredged up details he tried to forget. Sarah's full name, Sarah Michelle Bennett, born March 15, 1995 at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Patricia's sister Margaret's full name, Margaret Ann Holloway, the address where Margaret had lived in Evanston. Sarah's social security number, which he somehow still remembered. Michael typed everything into his phone, sending it off to his investigator. "He's fast. We should hear something within a few hours." "What do we do until then?" "We get you properly set up." Michael stood. "Come on, we're going shopping." "Shopping?" Thomas looked down at the clothes Michael had already provided. "I have clothes." "You have one outfit. You need more if you're going to start rebuilding your life." Michael grabbed his coat. "Besides, sitting here waiting will drive you crazy. Trust me." They took Michael's car this time, a modest SUV that didn't draw attention. Thomas watched Chicago pass by the windows, seeing the city differently now. Yesterday it had been a maze of alleys and shelters. Today it was a place where people lived and worked and loved. A place where his daughter might still be. Michael took him to a regular department store, not some fancy boutique. They moved through racks of clothes, Michael pulling items and Thomas trying them on. Jeans, shirts, a warm coat, proper boots. The normalcy of it, shopping like any two friends might do, felt surreal. "You need toiletries too," Michael said, steering them toward that section. "Toothbrush, razor, deodorant, the basics." Thomas followed, overwhelmed by choices. There were 20 kinds of toothpaste. How did people decide? When had the world gotten so complicated? "Pick one," Michael said gently, noticing his paralysis. "Doesn't matter which, just pick." Thomas grabbed one at random, then another, then more items until his arms were full. Michael added a few things Thomas hadn't thought of: nail clippers, shampoo, a comb. At the register, Thomas watched the total climb higher and higher. "This is too much." It's what you need. Don't argue. Michael handed over his card without looking at the price. Outside, loading bags into the car, Thomas finally spoke. Why are you really doing this? And don't give me that line about remembering me from Detroit. There's more to it. Michael closed the trunk and leaned against the car. Around them, people came and went from the store, living ordinary lives. He was quiet so long Thomas thought he wouldn't answer. My dad, Michael finally said. After he died, I found out he'd been struggling with some things. Financial trouble he'd hidden, pressure from people wanting favors because of my fame. He never asked me for help, never told me what he was going through, just handled it alone until he couldn't anymore. I'm sorry. The point is, I spent years wondering if I could have helped if I'd just paid more attention, if I'd looked past the surface and really seen what was happening. Michael met his eyes. When I saw you in that alley, wearing that military jacket, I saw someone who needed help but wouldn't ask for it. Someone trying to handle everything alone. And I thought, not this time. This time I'm paying attention. Thomas felt his throat tighten. Your dad would be proud of you. Maybe, but this isn't about making him proud. It's about doing what's right when you have the chance. Michael opened the car door. Come on, let's head back. Maybe we'll have news about Sarah. The drive back was quiet. Thomas watched the city pass, thinking about fathers and daughters, about pride and shame, about the ways we fail the people we love and the ways we might find our way back to them. At the hotel, Michael's phone buzzed as they entered the lobby. He glanced at it and his expression changed, surprised, then something Thomas couldn't read. What is it? Thomas asked, his heart suddenly racing. Let's go upstairs. Michael's voice was careful, controlled. In the elevator, Thomas's hand shook. He gripped his shopping bags tighter, trying to steady himself. Good news or bad? Did they find her? Was she okay? Inside the suite, Michael gestured to the couch. Sit down, Thomas. Just tell me. Whatever it is, just tell me. Michael sat across from him, phone in hand. My investigator found Sarah. She's alive, she's in Milwaukee, and she's... He paused, searching for words. She's doing something you need to see. He turned his phone around, showing Thomas a website. Thomas squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center, he read aloud. Then again, slower. The Thomas Bennett. She named it after you, Michael said softly. She started a nonprofit 3 years ago. It's a support center for veterans dealing with PTSD, homelessness, substance abuse. She helps them get counseling, housing, job training. Thomas couldn't breathe. The screen blurred as tears filled his eyes. He tried to speak, but no words came. Michael scrolled to an about page. She wrote this. Thomas took the phone with shaking hands and read. This center is named in honor of my father, Sergeant Thomas Bennett, who served in Operation Desert Storm. My father suffered from wounds we couldn't see, wounds of the mind and spirit that our country often ignores. He struggled with PTSD and made mistakes, but his love was always real. He taught me that broken doesn't mean worthless, and that everyone deserves a second chance at healing. Wherever he is, I hope he's found peace. This center exists to help other veterans find what he couldn't, a path home. Thomas made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. His whole body shook as years of held-back emotion poured out. He clutched the phone like it was Sarah herself, reading her words over and over. She doesn't hate me, he whispered. She doesn't hate me. No, Michael said gently. She loves you. She's been honoring you all this time. But she doesn't know the truth. She thinks I'm some kind of hero who just got sick. Thomas looked up, face wet with tears. She doesn't know I abandoned her, that I was too weak to be her father. Maybe she knows more than you think. Read it again. He struggled with PTSD and made mistakes. She understands, Thomas. She's not seeing you through a child's eyes anymore. Thomas read the words again, focusing on different parts this time. Everyone deserves a second chance at healing. Had she written that hoping he'd somehow see it? Was it a message for him wherever he was? How long has she been looking for me? He asked. Michael scrolled through more information on his phone. According to my investigator, she hired private detectives 5 years ago. They couldn't find you because you'd been living off the grid. No credit cards, no tax returns, no official residence. You effectively disappeared. I disappeared on purpose, thought it was better for her. But she didn't think so. She's been searching, hoping. Michael showed him another page, a donor list. Look at this. She raised over $300,000 for this center, from grants, donations, fundraising events. She did this herself, working a full-time job and building this in her free time. Thomas stared at the numbers, trying to comprehend. His daughter, his little girl who'd once worn an oversized basketball jersey, had built something this big, this important, and she'd named it after him, her broken father. "I don't deserve this," he said. "Don't deserve her." "Stop it." Michael's voice was sharp. "Stop deciding what you do or don't deserve. That's not your call to make. Sarah made this center because she believes in second chances. Are you really going to throw away the second chance she's been waiting to give you?" Thomas looked at the photograph he'd pulled from his pocket, the one he'd carried for 15 years. Sarah at 8, grinning with missing teeth. Then back at the phone, at the website with her name listed as founder and director. She'd grown up, become someone strong and purposeful and good, without him. The thought should have devastated him, but instead he felt something else. Pride. His daughter had taken the worst thing in her life, losing both parents, and turned it into something that helped others. She'd taken her pain and made it meaningful. She was so much stronger than he'd ever been. "There's more," Michael said hesitantly. "My investigator found her work address, her apartment. And Thomas, she volunteers at the center 3 days a week, even though she has a full-time job at a hospital as a social worker. She's there today." Today, right now. Sarah was in Milwaukee, probably at the center that bore his name, helping veterans who struggled like he had. "I can't just show up," Thomas said, panic rising. "I can't walk in there and surprise her. That's not fair to her." "No, it's not. We need to think this through carefully." Michael took his phone back. "But Thomas, you need to know something else before we decide what to do next." "What?" "The center is struggling financially. They're behind on rent, at risk of closing in 3 months if they can't raise money. Sarah's been working double shifts at the hospital to try to keep it open, but it might not be enough." Thomas felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "She's going to lose it. The thing she built in my name, she's going to lose it." "Maybe, unless someone helps." Michael met his eyes meaningfully. "You," Thomas said. "You could help, you could donate, keep it open." "I could, but is that what you want? Me riding in to save your daughter's center while you hide in a hotel room?" Michael's voice was kind but firm. "Or do you want to be part of saving it, part of her life again?" Thomas stood and walked to the window, looking out at Chicago stretching endlessly. Somewhere north of here, just a few hours away, Sarah was working to save a center named after a father she thought might be dead, working herself to exhaustion for a dream she'd built from grief. And he was here, alive, capable of helping, but terrified. "I don't know how to face her," he admitted. "Don't know what to say. Sorry I let you think I might be dead for 15 years doesn't really cut it." "No, it doesn't, but you know what might." Michael joined him at the window, showing up, doing the work, helping her save what matters to her. Actions, Thomas, not just words. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But you're a veteran. You've done hard things before. You've survived things that would break most people. This is just another battle, and this time you don't have to fight it alone." Thomas turned to look at him. "You'd come with me to Milwaukee?" "If you want me to, yes. We can drive up tomorrow, scope out the center, figure out the right approach." Michael put a hand on his shoulder. "But tonight, you need to make a decision. Are you ready to stop being a ghost? Ready to let Sarah know her father is alive?" The photograph in Thomas's pocket seemed to pulse with heat. He pulled it out one more time, looking at Sarah's 8-year-old face. "My hero, Daddy." He wasn't anyone's hero. He was just a man who'd failed and run and spent 15 years punishing himself for not being stronger. But maybe, just maybe, he could be the man who came back, who showed up even though he was terrified, who helped his daughter save the dream she'd built from the wreckage of their broken family. Maybe that could be enough. Thomas took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Okay," he said. "Tomorrow, we go to Milwaukee tomorrow." "You're sure?" "No, but I'm going anyway." Thomas looked at Michael. "Will you help me figure out what to say, how to approach this so I don't make it worse?" "We'll work on it tonight. Practice, prepare, think through every angle." Michael smiled. "But Thomas, whatever happens, whatever she says or does, at least she'll know. She'll know you're alive, you're trying, and you never stopped loving her. That has to count for something." Thomas nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Michael ordered dinner to the room and they talked through scenarios, practiced conversations, discussed possibilities. What if she was angry? What if she was hurt? What if she didn't believe him? What if she'd moved on and didn't want him back in her life? Then you accept it, Michael said. You respect her choice and you find another way to help. Maybe anonymous donations, maybe volunteer work. But you don't run again. That's the key. Whatever happens, you don't disappear. As night fell, Thomas stood at the window again, watching city lights blink on across Chicago. Tomorrow he'd drive to Milwaukee. Tomorrow he'd face his daughter for the first time in 15 years. Tomorrow his life would change forever, one way or another. He pulled out the photograph one last time, running his thumb over Sarah's smiling face. "I'm coming home, baby girl," he whispered. "Finally keeping my promise, I'm coming home." Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the city in white. A fresh start, a clean slate, a second chance at the life he'd thrown away, if he was brave enough to take it. Thomas didn't sleep that night. He lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as car headlights swept past outside. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face, sometimes 8 years old and smiling, sometimes older and angry, sometimes a complete stranger he wouldn't even recognize. 5 in the morning, he gave up trying. He showered, dressed in the new clothes Michael had bought him, and stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. The beard was still too long, still too gray. He looked old, worn, nothing like the father Sarah would remember. He found scissors in the hotel amenities kit and started cutting. Slowly, carefully, he trimmed the beard shorter, then shorter still. When he was done, he barely recognized himself. The face looking back was gaunt but cleaner, aged but more human. More like a father than a stranger. At 6:30, another knock. Michael entered with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. "Couldn't sleep either," Michael admitted, handing Thomas a cup. "Been thinking about this all night, about what we're doing, what it means." "Having second thoughts?" Thomas asked, hoping the answer was no. "Not second thoughts, just making sure we do this right." Michael sat down heavily. "I've been thinking about my own kids. The times I wasn't there because of basketball, because of business, because I was chasing something that seemed important at the time. The moments I missed that I can't get back." Thomas sipped his coffee, saying nothing. "My point is, I understand regret. I understand wanting a second chance to do things differently." Michael met his eyes. "So we're going to Milwaukee today and we're going to find your daughter, but Thomas, we're doing this for her, not for you. Her needs, her feelings, her timeline. Understood?" "Understood." "Good, let's go." The drive to Milwaukee took just under 2 hours. Thomas watched the landscape change from city to suburbs to highway stretches lined with winter bare trees. Michael drove in silence, letting Thomas process, giving him space to think. As they crossed into Wisconsin, Thomas's hands started shaking. He gripped his knees, trying to control the tremors. "Talk to me," Michael said. "What's going through your head? What if she takes one look at me and slams the door? What if she calls the police? What if—" Thomas stopped, breathing hard. "What if I hurt her all over again just by showing up?" "Those are all possibilities, but you know what else is possible? That she's been waiting for this day for 15 years. That seeing you alive is the answer to every prayer she's had." Michael glanced at him. "You can't control how she reacts. You can only control what you do. And right now, you're doing the brave thing. You're showing up." They drove through Milwaukee's outskirts, past strip malls and residential neighborhoods. Michael's GPS led them toward the city's south side, where the buildings got older and the streets got narrower. "We're close," Michael said. "The center is 3 blocks away." Thomas felt like he might throw up. "I need a minute, can we just drive past it first, not stop, just see it?" Michael nodded and kept driving. They turned onto a street lined with small businesses, a laundromat, a corner store, a tax preparation office. And there, between a thrift shop and a barber, was a storefront with a hand-painted sign. The Thomas B. and NETT, Veteran Recovery Center. Thomas's breath caught. Seeing it in person was different than seeing it on a website. The building was modest, the paint was fresh but clearly done by volunteers, not professionals. In the window were flyers for support groups, job training programs, housing assistance, and through the glass he could see people inside. Veterans sitting in a circle of chairs, someone standing at the front leading the discussion. "Is that her?" Thomas whispered, leaning forward. They were too far away to tell. Michael drove past slowly, then circled the block. "Want to go around again?" Michael asked. "No, yes, I don't know." Thomas pressed his hands against his face. "I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't." Michael pulled into a parking spot half a block away and turned off the engine. He didn't speak, just waited. "She built this," Thomas said finally, his voice muffled by his hands. "She built something beautiful out of all the pain I caused. What right do I have to walk in there and disrupt it?" The right of a father who loves his daughter, the right of a man who wants to help, the right of someone who made mistakes and wants to make amends. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. "Thomas, look at me." Thomas lowered his hands. "That center is struggling. Sarah is working herself to exhaustion trying to save it. You showing up isn't about disrupting her life. It's about helping her carry a burden that's too heavy for one person." Michael gestured toward the building. "She named it after you because she believes in what you represented, in service, in sacrifice, in redemption. Are you going to let her face failure alone, or are you going to be the father she believed you could be?" Thomas stared out the windshield at the center. A man in a worn military jacket walked in the front door. A few minutes later, another person entered. These were the people Sarah was helping. Veterans like him, struggling like him, trying to find their way home. "What's the plan?" Thomas asked quietly. "We go in. We say we're interested in the program. We observe, get a feel for the place. If Sarah's there, you'll see her. You can decide then if you're ready to reveal yourself or if you need more time." "And if I need more time?" "Then we leave and come back another day. There's no rush, Thomas. This happens on your timeline, not mine." Thomas nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and touched the photograph, drawing strength from it. Then he opened the car door. The cold air hit him like a slap. He stood on the sidewalk looking at the center, at the name above the door. His name. The name of a man who'd failed but who his daughter still believed deserved to be honored. "Ready?" Michael asked, joining him on the sidewalk. "No, but let's go anyway." They walked toward the center, their footsteps echoing on the cold pavement. With each step, Thomas's heart beat harder. 20 feet away. 15, 10, 5. His hand touched the door handle. Through the glass, he could see inside now. The circle of chairs. The veterans sitting, some attentive, some staring at the floor. And at the front of the room, leading the discussion. A woman, tall, maybe 5'8". Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, Patricia's smile. Thomas's eyes, Sarah, his daughter. All grown up and beautiful and strong, and right there, just on the other side of this door. Thomas froze. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "That's her," he whispered. Michael looked through the glass. "You sure?" "I'm sure I'd know her anywhere." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. She looked so much like her mother. They stood there, two men on a cold sidewalk, watching through a window as Sarah Bennett spoke to a room full of struggling veterans. She moved with confidence, with compassion, gesturing as she made a point that made one of the men laugh. "What's she saying?" Thomas asked, wishing he could hear. As if in answer, Sarah walked closer to the window and they could just make out her words. "Not about being perfect. It's about being present, about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Your families, your friends, they don't need you to be heroes. They just need you to be there." Thomas made a sound like he'd been punched. Those words about showing up, about being there, were they for him? Had she said them hoping he'd somehow hear? "She's good at this," Michael observed. "Natural leader, compassionate but firm." "She's amazing," Thomas breathed. "She's absolutely amazing, and I missed it all. Missed watching her grow into this person." "But you're here now. You can be part of her future, even if you missed her past." Inside, the group session seemed to be ending. Veterans stood, some shaking Sarah's hand, others hugging her. She smiled at each one, spoke briefly, touched shoulders in comfort and encouragement. "We should go in," Michael said, "before the session completely breaks up." But Thomas couldn't move. Watching Sarah through the glass was one thing. Actually facing her, speaking to her, revealing himself, that was something else entirely. "I need to know what to say first," Thomas said desperately. "Need to have the right words." "There are no right words, there's just the truth." Michael put a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, I'll be right there with you." Michael opened the door and a small bell chimed. The warmth of the center washed over them, along with the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet conversations. The walls were covered with inspirational posters, photographs of veterans, program information. And there, in the center of it all, was a framed photograph, enlarged, professional quality. The same photograph Thomas carried in his pocket, Sarah, Patricia, and Thomas on that sunny day, all three smiling, whole, happy. Below it, a plaque, in memory of Sergeant Thomas Bennett, Operation Desert Storm. A hero, a father, a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance. Thomas stared at it, unable to look away. In memory, she thought he was dead, actually dead, not just missing. "Can I help you?" The voice made Thomas's world stop spinning. He turned slowly, and there she was, 3 feet away, looking at him with polite curiosity. Sarah, his daughter, real and solid and alive. She'd grown her mother's height, had her mother's elegant neck and graceful hands. But her eyes, those were his eyes, dark brown and intense. Her jaw was strong, determined. She looked tired, like she'd been working too hard for too long, but there was a light in her that couldn't be dimmed. Michael spoke when Thomas couldn't. "We heard about the center. We're interested in the program." Sarah smiled, and Thomas nearly collapsed. That smile. He remembered that smile from when she was 8, 10, 13. He'd carried it in his memory for 15 years, and here it was, real and directed at him, even though she had no idea who he was. "Of course, I'm Sarah Bennett, the director here." She extended her hand to Michael first, who shook it, then to Thomas. Thomas stared at her hand. If he took it, if he touched her, would she know? Would she feel some recognition, some connection? "Sir?" Sarah asked, hand still extended, a slight confusion crossing her face. Thomas reached out. His hand, rough and scarred, engulfed her smaller one. The touch sent electricity through him, his daughter, his little girl, now a woman, shaking his hand like he was a stranger. "I'm Thomas," he said, his voice barely working. "Thomas Miller." The lie came automatically, a last-minute protection. He wasn't ready, she wasn't ready. "Nice to meet you, Thomas." Sarah's grip was firm, confident. She held his hand a moment longer than necessary, her eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him wonder if some part of her recognized him. Then she released it and turned to Michael. "And you are?" "Michael, I'm helping Thomas explore his options. He's a veteran dealing with some challenges." "Well, you've come to the right place." Sarah gestured around the center. "We offer support groups 3 times a week, individual counseling, job training assistance, and housing resources. We also have connections with VA benefits counselors who can help navigate the system." As she talked, Thomas drank in every detail. The way she moved her hands when she spoke, just like Patricia used to. The slight tilt of her head when she was thinking. The passion in her voice when she described the program. "This is a beautiful space," Michael said, covering for Thomas's silence. "How long have you been operating?" 3 years next month. We started small, just me and 2 volunteers, but we've grown. We've helped over 200 veterans find housing, employment, and mental health support." Pride shone in her voice. "It's been the most meaningful work of my life." "Why this cause?" Michael asked. "What made you start this center?" Sarah's expression softened, grew distant. She walked toward the framed photograph on the wall, and Thomas and Michael followed. "My father," she said quietly, looking up at the image. "He was a Desert Storm veteran. He struggled with PTSD after he came home, and our country failed him. Failed to give him the support he needed, failed to understand invisible wounds, failed to treat him like the hero he was." Thomas's throat closed completely. "He disappeared when I was 15. I don't know if he's alive or dead." Her voice cracked slightly. "But I know he suffered, and I know there are thousands of veterans out there suffering just like he did. So I built this place for him, for them, to make sure no one else has to struggle alone the way he did." The room was silent except for the quiet conversations of veterans in the background. Thomas wanted to speak, wanted to reach out and tell her he was right here. He was alive, he'd never stopped thinking about her. But his voice wouldn't work. "That's incredibly admirable," Michael said gently. "Your father would be proud." Sarah smiled sadly. "I hope so, I really hope so." She turned back to them, wiping quickly at her eyes. "Sorry, I get emotional talking about him. It's been 20 years since I lost him, and some days it still feels like yesterday." 20 years. She was counting from when Patricia died, not from when he'd left. She'd lost him the day she'd lost her mother, even though he'd still been alive, because he'd stopped being her father that day. He'd stopped showing up, stopped being present, stopped being there. Just like she'd said in her talk, they don't need you to be heroes, they just need you to be there. And he hadn't been. I should get back to work, Sarah said, shaking off the sadness. Can I get you some information packets? We have intake forms if you'd like to join one of our support groups. Actually, Michael said, glancing at Thomas, we were hoping to look around a bit more, maybe sit in on a group session. Of course, next group starts in an hour, you're welcome to stay. Sarah pulled out business cards from her pocket. Here's my card. My cell number is on there if you have any questions. Thomas took the card with shaking fingers. Sarah Bennett, MSW Director, a Milwaukee phone number, his daughter's phone number. Thank you, he managed to whisper. Sarah looked at him more closely. Are you okay, Mr. Miller? You seem upset. Too much? She was standing too close, looking at him too carefully. In a moment she'd see through his lie, recognize something in his eyes or his face or the way he held himself. I'm fine, Thomas said quickly, stepping back. Just emotional. This place, what you're doing, it's overwhelming. I understand. A lot of our veterans feel that way when they first come in. Sarah touched his arm gently, a gesture of comfort. You're safe here. This is a judgment-free space. Whatever you've been through, whatever you're dealing with, you're not alone anymore. The touch broke something in Thomas. He pulled back like he'd been burned. I need air, he muttered, turning toward the door. Need to step outside. Thomas, Michael started. But Thomas was already moving, pushing through the door, the bell chiming frantically as he stumbled onto the sidewalk. The cold air hit his lungs and he bent over, hands on his knees, trying to breathe. She touched him, comforted him, told him he was safe, that he wasn't alone. And she had no idea she was talking to the father who'd abandoned her. Behind him, the door opened. Michael came out, followed by Sarah. Is he okay? Sarah asked, concern in her voice. Does he need medical attention? He's fine, Michael assured her. Just overwhelming. First time seeking help is always hard. Thomas straightened up, wiping his face. He turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, backlit by the warm light of the center, looking at him with such genuine compassion that it nearly destroyed him. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize, Sarah interrupted. Everyone processes trauma differently. If you need time, take time. But please come back. We can help you, Mr. Miller, I promise. Thomas nodded, unable to speak. He memorized her face one more time, the woman his daughter had become, strong and kind and dedicated to helping people like him. People she didn't know were exactly like him. We'll come back, Michael said. Thank you for your time, Ms. Bennett. Sarah, please, and you're welcome anytime. She gave them both a smile that was pure sunshine, then went back inside. Through the window, Thomas watched her return to her work, speaking with a veteran who'd approached her, giving him her full attention like he was the most important person in the world. Come on, Michael said quietly. Let's go. They walked back to the car in silence. Thomas climbed in, closed the door, and finally let himself break down completely. Great, gasping sobs that shook his whole body, tears that had been held back for 15 years pouring out all at once. Michael sat beside him, not speaking, just present. Being there like Sarah had said. Not trying to fix anything, just witnessing the pain. When Thomas finally stopped, emptied out, Michael handed him tissues from the glove compartment. She's incredible, Thomas said, his voice raw. She's everything I hoped she'd be and more, and I almost destroyed her chance to become that person. But you didn't. She survived. She thrived. She turned her pain into purpose. Michael started the car. And now you have a choice. Walk away and let her keep thinking you're dead, or find a way to come back into her life properly. How? How do I tell her the truth without destroying everything she's built? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Michael pulled out of the parking spot. The important thing is you saw her, you know she's okay, and now we can make a plan. A real plan, one that puts her needs first. As they drove away from the center, Thomas looked back through the rear window. Sarah was visible through the glass, still working, still helping, still being the hero she'd never needed to be if he'd just been stronger. But maybe, just maybe, he could become the father she deserved now. Maybe it wasn't too late to show up, to be there, to prove that second chances were real. He pulled out the photograph, looking at 8-year-old Sarah's face, then thinking about the woman she'd become. I'm not running anymore, he said quietly. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm not running. I'm going to find a way to make this right." "Good," Michael said, "because that woman back there, she's been waiting for you to come home for 15 years, and I think it's time you finally did." Thomas nodded, clutching the photograph, his daughter's business card, and the fragile hope that somehow, someway, he could find his way back into her life. Back home to the daughter who never stopped believing he was a hero, even when he'd stopped believing it himself. They drove in silence for 20 minutes before Michael pulled into a small diner on the outskirts of Milwaukee. Thomas hadn't said a word since they'd left the center, just stared out the window with his daughter's business card clutched in his hand. Inside the diner, Michael ordered coffee for both of them. Thomas sat across from him, numb, his mind replaying every second of seeing Sarah, the sound of her voice, the warmth of her hand, the way she'd looked at him with such compassion, not knowing she was comforting her own father. "Talk to me," Michael said when the coffee arrived. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I'm a coward. I had her right there 3 feet away and I lied, gave her a fake name." Thomas's voice was hollow. "What kind of father does that?" "A scared one, a human one." Michael stirred sugar into his coffee. "But Thomas, you need to understand something. What happened back there, that was good." "Good, I ran away again." "No, you didn't run away, you took a strategic retreat. There's a difference." Michael leaned forward. "Think about it. If you'd revealed yourself right then in front of other people when she was working with no warning, that would have been selfish. This way, we have information. We know where she is, what she's doing, what matters to her. We can approach this the right way." Thomas wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Maybe Michael was right. Maybe bursting out with the truth in that moment would have been about his need, not Sarah's. "She thinks I'm dead," Thomas said quietly. "You heard her. I don't know if he's alive or dead. That means she's grieved me, buried me in her mind. What happens when I show up and destroy that peace? Or what happens when she finds out her father is alive? That the man she's been honoring, searching for, grieving, he's real and he wants to be part of her life." Michael took a sip of coffee. "It could go either way, but don't you think she deserves the chance to decide?" Before Thomas could answer, Michael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed. "What?" Thomas asked, anxiety spiking immediately. "It's my investigator. He sent more information about Sarah." Michael scrolled through his phone, his frown deepening. "Thomas, there's something else you need to know, something important." "Just tell me." Michael turned his phone around, showing Thomas an email. Thomas squinted at the small text, trying to make sense of legal documents and financial statements. "The center is in worse shape than we thought," Michael said. "They're not just behind on rent, they're 3 months behind. The landlord has started eviction proceedings. If Sarah can't come up with $15,000 by the end of January, they're done. The center closes." Thomas felt sick. That's only 6 weeks away. "It gets worse. Sarah took out a personal loan to keep the center running last year. She's behind on those payments too. If the center closes, she'll still owe that money, but she won't have the nonprofit income to help pay it back." "How much does she owe?" "Total, almost $30,000. Michael scrolled through more documents. "And there's more. She's been working double shifts at the hospital 60, sometimes 70 hours a week, trying to earn enough to save both the center and her own finances. According to this, she hasn't taken a day off in 4 months. Thomas stared at the numbers on the screen, each one a knife to his heart. His daughter was drowning, working herself into exhaustion, sacrificing everything for a center named after him. A center that was failing, because of him. "This is my fault," Thomas whispered. "All of it. If I hadn't left, if I'd been there to help her through losing Patricia, she wouldn't have this mission. Wouldn't be destroying herself trying to save other people's fathers because she couldn't save her own." "Stop," Michael's voice was sharp. "Stop making this about your guilt. This is about Sarah's choice. She chose to build this center because she believes in the mission. That's admirable, not pathetic." "Admirable? She's going to lose everything." "Not if we help her." Michael set down his phone deliberately. "I can write a check right now. $15,000 to clear the rent. Another $30,000 to clear her personal loans. Hell, I can endow the whole center, make sure it never has to worry about money again." Hope flared in Thomas's chest. "You'd do that?" "Of course I would, but..." Michael held up a hand before Thomas could thank him. "That's not the question. The question is, Do you want me to do it anonymously, or do you want to be part of the solution? Thomas didn't understand. What do you mean? I mean, I can donate as Michael Jordan, former NBA player who supports veterans' causes. Sarah gets the money. The center is saved. She never knows you were involved. You stay Thomas Miller, or you disappear entirely and she goes on with her life. Or you become part of saving it, not by giving money, you don't have any, but by giving yourself. Your time, your experience, your story. Michael leaned back. You're a veteran who understands PTSD, homelessness, addiction, all the things her clients face. You could volunteer there, help her with the programs, be a counselor or mentor. And while you're doing that, while you're proving yourself, you could find the right moment to tell her the truth. Thomas's mind raced. Work at the center. Be around Sarah day after day, knowing who he was while she didn't. It sounded like torture. It also sounded like the only way to truly make amends. I don't have any credentials, Thomas said. No degree, no training. Why would she hire me? Because you're a peer counselor, someone who's been there, survived it, understands it from the inside. A lot of veterans respond better to peer counselors than professional therapists. Michael pulled up something else on his phone. Look, the center's website lists peer counseling as one of their services, but according to their staff page, they only have 2 peer counselors and both are part-time volunteers. They need more. Thomas looked at Sarah's website, at the smiling faces of the veterans they'd helped. Could he do this? Could he be useful, be part of something meaningful again? What if I mess up? What if I make things worse for her clients? Then you learn and do better. That's how growth works. Michael's voice softened. Thomas, I've been thinking about this all morning. The best way to come back into Sarah's life isn't to just appear and dump 15 years of explanations on her. It's to show her who you are now. Let her see you helping people, being stable, being reliable. Earn her trust as Thomas Miller before you reveal yourself as Thomas Bennett. That's deceptive. It's strategic. There's a difference. Michael finished his coffee. Look, you have 2 choices here. Choice 1. I donate the money anonymously. You disappear back to Chicago. Sarah never knows you're alive. She saves the center but keeps grieving you, keeps wondering, keeps searching for answers she'll never get. Thomas flinched. Choice 2, we do this right. I donate some money to stabilize the center immediately. Not enough to solve everything, just enough to buy time. You apply to volunteer as a peer counselor. You work there, you help the veterans, you show Sarah who you are through your actions. And when the time is right, when she's ready and you've proven you're stable and committed, you tell her the truth. What if she fires me on the spot? What if she never forgives me? Then at least you tried, at least you gave her the choice. Michael signaled for the check. But Thomas, from what I saw today, that woman has been waiting for you her whole life. She named a center after you. She speaks about you with love, not anger. She believes in second chances. She literally built a nonprofit around that concept. If there's anyone in the world who might forgive you, it's her. Thomas pulled out the photograph again, looking at Sarah's 8-year-old face, then thinking about the confident woman he'd met today. How long would I have to keep up the lie? As long as it takes. Could be weeks, could be months. But every day you're there, you're helping veterans like yourself. You're making a real difference. You're becoming the man she believed you could be. Michael paid the check and stood. And when you finally tell her, you won't be the broken man who abandoned her. You'll be the man who came back, who worked hard, who proved he could be trusted again. It made sense, painful, difficult, terrifying sense. What about you? Thomas asked. You're just going to bankroll this whole thing. I'm going to help, not bankroll help. There's a difference. Michael headed for the door. I'll make a donation to get them current on rent. Call it $20,000 from an anonymous donor who believes in their mission. That gives the center breathing room and gives you time to get in there and prove yourself. Outside, the winter sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Thomas looked back toward Milwaukee, toward the center where Sarah was probably still working, still fighting, still trying to save a dream built on the memory of a father she thought was gone. Okay, Thomas said. Let's do it. But I need help. Need to know what to say, how to apply, how to be around her without falling apart. We'll practice. I'll coach you. And Thomas, Michael opened the car door. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Harder than Desert Storm, harder than living on the streets, harder than anything. You're going to see her every day and not be able to tell her who you are. You're going to have to earn her respect as a stranger. Can you handle that?" Thomas thought about Sarah's smile, her compassion, the way she'd touched his arm in comfort. He thought about the center bearing his name, about to close because there wasn't enough money, about his daughter working herself to exhaustion trying to save it. "I can handle it," he said. "For her, I can handle anything." They drove back to Chicago as darkness fell. Thomas watched the highway lights blur past, his mind already working on what he'd say when he applied to volunteer, how he'd present himself, what story he'd tell that was true enough to be believed but false enough to hide who he really was. Back at the hotel, Michael ordered dinner while Thomas sat with a notebook, writing down ideas. "Tell me your story," Michael said, "the one you'll give Sarah. It needs to be mostly true. You won't be able to maintain a complete lie. So what's the truth you can share?" Thomas thought for a moment, then started writing. "Served in Desert Storm. Came home with PTSD. Struggled with homelessness and addiction. Recently got clean and stable. Want to give back by helping other veterans." "That's good, that's basically true. What about family?" "No family to speak of. Divorced, no contact with ex-wife or kids." The words hurt to write, but they were close enough to the truth. "Where have you been living?" "Chicago, working odd jobs, staying at." Thomas looked up. "I need an address, references, a work history." "Leave that to me," Michael said. "I have people who can create a legitimate background. Nothing fake, just filled in gaps. You've been doing construction work in Chicago, living at a halfway house that's real and will verify your stay if anyone calls. You got help from a veterans outreach program, also real, also will verify. You can do all that. I have resources, and I believe in this, in you, in giving you a real shot at making this right." Michael handed him a plate of food. "Eat. Tomorrow we work on your interview skills. I want you ready to walk into that center next week and nail this." Spent the evening practicing. Michael played Sarah, asking tough questions. Why did Thomas want to volunteer? What qualified him? What were his triggers? How did he handle stress? Thomas stumbled at first, then found his rhythm. The truth was his foundation. He'd lived this pain, survived it, understood it. He just had to present it as Thomas Miller's story, not Thomas Bennett's. "One more thing," Michael said as the night grew late. "When she asks why you chose her center specifically, what will you say?" Thomas had already thought about this. "I'll tell her I was moved by the mission, by the idea that broken doesn't mean worthless, that everyone deserves a second chance." Using her own words. "They're not just her words anymore, I believe them too." Thomas met Michael's eyes. "I am broken, but maybe I'm not worthless. Maybe I can still do something meaningful." Michael smiled. "There's the man Sarah's been waiting for." That night Thomas slept better than he had in years. Not because things were resolved, they weren't, but because he had a plan, a purpose, a path forward that didn't involve running or hiding. He dreamed of the center, of helping veterans find their way home. And in his dream, Sarah smiled at him, not with pity or compassion, but with recognition, with pride, with love. When he woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows. His phone, a cheap prepaid one Michael had bought him, showed a text from Michael, ready to become Thomas Miller. Thomas looked at the photograph on the nightstand. Sarah, Patricia, and his former self, all smiling at a future they thought would be bright and simple. Life hadn't been simple, but maybe, just maybe, it could still be bright. He texted back, "Ready." Over the next 3 days, Michael worked his magic. The donation appeared in the center's account, $20,000 from an anonymous benefactor who'd heard about their work and wanted to help. Thomas watched Sarah's Facebook post about it, her joy and relief evident in every word. "This gives us time," she wrote. "Time to save our center, time to help more veterans, time to prove that miracles still happen. To our anonymous donor, you've given hope to so many. Thank you." Thomas read the post 5 times, his chest tight with emotion. He'd helped her. Not as her father, but he'd helped. It was a start. Michael's people created Thomas Miller's background. A real address at a veteran's halfway house in Chicago. Real references from real people who'd been briefed and agreed to help. A work history that was sparse but legitimate. A DD-214 form showing his military service, altered slightly to match the story but close enough to the truth. "You're now officially Thomas Miller, 52 years old, Desert Storm veteran, seeking to rebuild your life through service, Michael said, handing him a folder with all the documents. Everything in here is real or real enough that it'll stand up to scrutiny. This feels wrong, Thomas said, flipping through the papers, like I'm committing fraud. You're protecting your daughter until the time is right to tell her the truth. There's a difference. Michael sat beside him. But Thomas, you need to understand something. Once you do this, once you walk into that center as Thomas Miller, you're committed. You can't run, can't disappear if it gets hard. You have to see it through wherever it leads. I understand. Do you? Because the moment you reveal yourself, everything changes. She could forgive you. She could hate you. She could need time to process. Whatever happens, you have to respect her response and her timeline, not yours. Thomas nodded slowly. I just want her to know I never stopped loving her, that every day I was gone, she was in my heart. Then show her, through your actions, through your commitment, through becoming the father she deserves. Michael stood, ready to go to Milwaukee. To apply, I'll drive you there, wait in the car. This part you have to do alone. The drive felt shorter this time. Thomas watched Milwaukee approach, his stomach churning with nerves. He'd practiced his story 100 times, but what if he forgot? What if Sarah saw through him immediately? What if? Stop, Michael said, reading his anxiety. You've got this. Just be honest about what you know, helping veterans, understanding their pain, wanting to give back. The rest will follow. They parked a block from the center. Thomas sat in the car, breathing deeply, trying to calm his racing heart. Remember, Michael said, you're not going in there as her father. You're going as a veteran who needs purpose and wants to help. That's true. That's real. Hold on to that. Thomas nodded, grabbed his folder of documents, and stepped out of the car. The walk to the center felt like miles. His legs moved automatically, carrying him forward even as every instinct screamed to turn back. The bell chimed as he opened the door. Sarah looked up from the desk where she was working. Her face broke into a smile of recognition. Mr. Miller, you came back. I did, Thomas said, his voice steadier than he felt. I was hoping I could talk to you about volunteering. Sarah's smile grew wider. Of course. Come in, please. Let me just finish this email and I'm all yours. Thomas sat in the waiting area, looking around the center with new eyes. This was where he'd be spending his time, where he'd work alongside his daughter, where he'd finally stop running and start rebuilding, where he'd prove he could be the man she'd always believed he was, even if she didn't know it yet. Sarah finished her email and gestured him into her small office. So, you're interested in volunteering. That's wonderful. We always need help, especially peer counselors. That's what I was thinking. I'm a veteran, I've been through some tough times, and I want to help others who are struggling. Tell me about your experience, Sarah said, pulling out a notepad. What branch did you serve in? And Thomas Miller began his story, the one that was true enough to believe, false enough to protect, and real enough to matter. The story that would bring him back into his daughter's life, one careful step at a time. Thomas sat across from Sarah in her small office, trying to keep his hands from shaking. The room was tiny, barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs, but Sarah had made it warm. Photographs of veterans covered one wall, success stories, she explained, people who'd found their way through the program. On another wall hung certificates, her social work degree from Marquette University, volunteer awards, letters of appreciation. And there on her desk in a simple frame, the photograph. The 3 of them, younger and whole. Thomas forced himself to look away before she noticed his staring. So, Mr. Miller. Thomas, please. Thomas, she smiled, and his heart broke all over again. Tell me about your military service. He'd practiced this, kept it close to the truth, just changed enough details. Army, 1989 to 1995. Did 1 deployment to Desert Storm, came home in 91. His voice was steady. Years of living on the streets had taught him how to control his expressions, hide his feelings. Thought I'd be fine. Wasn't. Sarah nodded, her pen moving across her notepad. PTSD. Yeah, nightmares, anxiety, couldn't hold down a job, started drinking to cope. Each word was true, even if the timeline was slightly altered. Lost my family, lost everything really. Spent years bouncing around, homeless for a while. I'm sorry. Her voice was genuine, full of the compassion he'd seen before. What changed? What brought you here? This was the part Michael had coached him on. I got tired of being dead while I was still alive, Thomas said quietly. Tired of wasting the life other people died to protect. A friend helped me get into a halfway house in Chicago, helped me get clean, get stable. And I realized I needed to do something meaningful with whatever time I have left. Sarah studied him carefully. His eyes, searched his face like she was looking for something. Truth, recognition. He held her gaze, letting her see his sincerity, even if she couldn't see his identity. Why this center specifically? She asked. There are veteran programs in Chicago. Thomas had prepared for this question, but it still hurt to answer. I read about your mission, about how you believe broken doesn't mean worthless, how everyone deserves a second chance. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I need to believe that. Need to believe I can still matter, still help. And I thought maybe, if I could help other veterans find their way home, maybe I could find my own way too. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. She blinked them back quickly, professional. That's beautiful, Thomas. That's exactly the kind of perspective our clients need. I also read about your father, Thomas continued, his throat tight. About how you named this place after him. A Desert Storm vet who struggled like I struggled. That meant something to me. Sarah looked at the photograph on her desk, her expression tender and sad. He would have liked you, I think. Would have understood what you're going through. I'm right here, Thomas wanted to scream. I'm sitting right in front of you and I understand everything because I am him. But he just nodded. Tell me about him. Sarah's smile was bittersweet. He was the best father a girl could ask for. Strong, kind, always made me feel safe. He loved basketball. We'd shoot hoops in the driveway for hours. He'd let me win sometimes, but not always. Said life wouldn't let me win just for showing up, so he wouldn't either. Thomas remembered those games. Remembered Sarah's determination, her frustration when she missed, her joy when she scored. He treasured every moment. He sounds like a good man. He was until the war broke him. Sarah's voice dropped. My mom died in a car accident when I was 13. Dad couldn't handle it. The PTSD got worse. He started drinking. Everything fell apart. My aunt took me in when I was 15 and Dad, he disappeared. I haven't seen him in 20 years. You must miss him. Every day. She wiped her eyes. Sorry, I don't usually get this emotional. Something about you reminds me of him, I guess. The way you talk about wanting to matter, wanting to help, that was him. He always wanted to do the right thing, even when his brain wouldn't let him. Thomas couldn't breathe. She saw him. Not consciously, not deliberately, but some part of her recognized her father sitting across from her. Do you think he's still alive? Thomas asked softly. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I used to think so. Used to believe he'd come back someday like he promised. I hired investigators, searched online, looked for any trace of him. She shook her head. But it's been 20 years. If he was alive, if he wanted to be found, he would have reached out by now. So I tell myself he's gone. It's easier than hoping. Each word was a knife. She'd given up. She'd stopped hoping because he'd stayed away too long. Maybe he wanted to reach out but didn't know how, Thomas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe he was too ashamed of what he'd become, too afraid you'd reject him. Then he was a fool. Sarah's voice was fierce, sudden. I would have taken him back in a heartbeat. Broken, drunk, homeless, I wouldn't have cared. He was my father. I loved him. All he had to do was knock on my door. Thomas felt tears burning behind his eyes. He blinked them away, coughing to cover his emotion. You okay? Sarah asked, concerned. Fine, just. Your story hits close to home. He cleared his throat. I've been that man, too ashamed to face the people I hurt. I understand why your father stayed away, even if it was the wrong choice. Well, you're here now. You're trying. That's what matters. Sarah straightened in her chair, professional again. Let's talk about the volunteer position. Have you done any peer counseling before? No formal training, just lived it. Thomas pulled out his folder of documents, the carefully crafted background Michael's people had created. But I'm willing to learn, willing to do whatever training you require. Sarah reviewed his papers, the DD-214, the reference letters, the proof of residence at the Chicago halfway house. She made notes, asked questions about his experience with different aspects of PTSD, his coping mechanisms, his triggers. Thomas answered honestly. The beauty of the lie was that most of it was truth. He had struggled with all these things. He had learned hard lessons. He had survived when others hadn't. I'm impressed, Thomas. Sarah set down his file. Your references are strong and your personal experience is exactly what our clients need. But I have to be honest, we can't pay you. We barely have enough funding to keep the lights on. This would be pure volunteer work. I don't need money, I need purpose. Thomas met her eyes. I have disability benefits that cover my basics. What I don't have is a reason to get up in the morning. This could be that reason. Sarah smiled, really smiled, and Thomas saw 8-year-old Sarah in that expression. The joy she'd had before loss hardened her. When can you start? Whenever you need me. How about tomorrow? We have a group session at 10. You could observe, get a feel for how we run things. Then if you're comfortable, you could start co-facilitating next week. Tomorrow, he'd be back here tomorrow, starting his new life as Thomas Miller, peer counselor and volunteer. Starting the long road back to being the father Sarah deserved. Tomorrow's perfect. Sarah stood and extended her hand. Welcome to the Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center, Thomas. I think you're going to do great things here. Thomas shook her hand, holding it just a moment too long. Thank you for the chance, for believing in second chances. It's what my father would have wanted, helping veterans find their way home. She walked him to the door. Oh, and Thomas, that thing you said earlier about being dead while you're still alive, I'm going to remember that. That's powerful. Your father taught me that, Thomas said before he could stop himself. Sarah looked confused. My father, but you said you never met him. Thomas's heart hammered. Stupid, he'd been careless. I meant metaphorically, reading about him, about his struggle. It taught me that lesson. Sarah nodded slowly, but something lingered in her eyes, a question, a doubt. Right, of course. I'll see you tomorrow, Thomas. Outside, Thomas leaned against the building, breathing hard. He'd almost blown it, almost revealed himself in the first conversation. He needed to be more careful. Michael's car pulled up and Thomas climbed in. How did it go? Michael asked. I got the position. Start tomorrow. Thomas stared straight ahead. And I almost told her, almost slipped and revealed everything. But you didn't, you caught yourself. Michael pulled into traffic. This is going to be hard, Thomas. Harder than you think. Being around her every day, watching her work, hearing her talk about you like you're dead, it's going to tear you apart. I know, but I'm committed. I'm seeing this through. Good, because there's something else we need to discuss. Michael's tone became serious. That $20,000 I donated, it buys time, but it doesn't solve the problem. The center still needs sustainable funding, a business plan, community support. Sarah's running herself ragged trying to do everything alone. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that as Thomas Miller, you help her build something stable. Use your time there to not just counsel veterans, but to help strengthen the organization itself. Make yourself invaluable, so when the truth comes out, she has reasons to forgive you beyond just blood. Thomas understood. Earn his place, prove his worth, show Sarah he could be relied upon. I can do that. They drove back to Chicago, and Thomas spent the evening preparing for tomorrow. He read everything he could find about peer counseling, about support groups, about helping veterans with PTSD. Some of it he already knew from living it. Some was new, techniques, approaches, frameworks for understanding trauma. He fell asleep reading Sarah's social media posts, learning about her life through pixels and text. She loved coffee, hated winter, ran marathons to raise money for the center. She posted photos of veterans who'd succeeded, their stories of hope and healing. She was relentlessly positive, even when discussing hard topics. She was, in every way, her mother's daughter. But she had his stubbornness too, his refusal to quit even when quitting would be easier. The next morning, Thomas woke before dawn. He dressed carefully in the clothes Michael had bought, nothing too nice, nothing that screamed, I have money. Just clean, practical clothes for a man trying to rebuild his life. Michael drove him to Milwaukee again, dropping him off a block from the center. Remember, Michael said, you're Thomas Miller today, yesterday, every day until you choose to be someone else. Don't slip, don't rush. Let this unfold naturally. I will. And Thomas, I'm proud of you for doing this the right way, for putting her needs first. Thomas nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He walked to the center, arriving 15 minutes early. Sarah was already there, setting up chairs in a circle, laying out coffee and donuts. "Let me help," Thomas said, grabbing chairs. They worked in comfortable silence, preparing the space. Other volunteers arrived, an older woman named Dorothy who managed intake, a young veteran named Marcus who'd been through the program and now helped facilitate. They greeted Thomas warmly, welcoming him to the team. At 10 o'clock, veterans started arriving. Some looked rough, clearly homeless or recently housed. Others seemed more stable but carried trauma in their eyes. They grabbed coffee, took seats, waited for the session to begin. Sarah stood in the center of the circle. "Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Bennett, director of this center. Today we have a new volunteer joining us. Thomas Miller is a Desert Storm veteran and peer counselor. Thomas, want to introduce yourself?" Thomas stood, his legs shaky. 10 faces looked at him, men and women who'd served, who'd suffered, who were looking for something to hold on to. "I'm Thomas," he said. "Army, Desert Storm. Struggled with PTSD, homelessness, addiction, all the things you've probably dealt with too. I'm not here to fix anyone or preach. I'm just here to listen, to share, to be present. Because I know what it's like to feel alone in a crowded room, and none of us should have to feel that way anymore." The veterans nodded. One man, maybe 30, with scars on his face, spoke up. "What made you want to help?" Thomas thought about Sarah, about the daughter who'd built this place while grieving a father she thought was dead, about the years he'd wasted running from himself. "I got tired of being dead while I was still alive," he said, "and I figured if I couldn't save myself, maybe I could help save someone else. Maybe that would be enough." The scarred veteran nodded. "Yeah, I get that." Sarah smiled at Thomas, approval in her eyes, and started the session. For the next 2 hours, Thomas listened to stories that echoed his own. Veterans who couldn't sleep, who jumped at loud noises, who pushed away everyone who loved them. Veterans who were angry at the government, angry at civilians who didn't understand, angry at themselves for not being strong enough to just get over it. Thomas shared when appropriate, kept quiet when someone else needed space. He found himself drawn to a quiet man in the corner, maybe 50, who hadn't spoken the entire session. During a break, Thomas sat beside him. "You doing okay?" The man shrugged. "Been better, been worse." "What branch?" "Marines, Iraq 2004. "Rough deployment." "They're all rough." The man looked at Thomas. "You really get it, or you just another do-gooder playing at understanding?" Thomas rolled up his sleeve, showing scars on his forearm, some from war, some from years on the street, some from fights he barely remembered. "I really get it." The man studied the scars, then nodded. "Okay, maybe you do." They sat in silence, 2 veterans who didn't need words. After a moment, the man spoke again. "She's good, isn't she, Sarah? She really cares." "Yeah, she is." Her old man must have been something special for her to do all this in his memory. The Marine looked at him. "You ever meet him, Thomas Bennett?" Thomas's throat closed. "No, but I've heard he was a good man who made some bad choices." "Aren't we all?" The Marine stood as Sarah called everyone back. "See you around, Thomas." The session ended at noon. Veterans filed out slowly, some stopping to thank Sarah, others leaving quietly. Marcus helped clean up while Dorothy organized paperwork. "You did great," Sarah said to Thomas, stacking chairs. "Really great. The guys responded to you." "Just being honest." That's exactly what they need. Not platitudes or pity, just honest understanding. She grabbed her coat. "I have to run to the hospital for my shift, but same time Thursday, another group session." "I'll be here." Sarah paused at the door. "Thomas, thank you for coming back, for giving this a chance. My father," her voice caught. "He would have liked you, would have wanted to sit in that circle with you, share his story, help others. You're doing what he couldn't, and that means more to me than you know." Then she was gone, leaving Thomas standing in the empty center, surrounded by the work his daughter had built in his name. Marcus approached, carrying the last of the coffee supplies. "She talks about him a lot, her dad. You notice that?" "Hard not to." "Yeah, it's like she's keeping him alive through this place, through helping us." Marcus set down the supplies. Must have been some kind of man to inspire this kind of devotion 20 years after he disappeared. Or some kind of failure, Thomas said quietly, to make her feel like she has to do all this to make up for losing him. Marcus looked at him sharply. That's a dark way to see it. Maybe, but sometimes the truth is dark. You think he's dead, Bennett? Thomas thought about that question, about all the ways a person could be dead while still breathing. I think he's been dead for a long time. Question is whether he can come back to life. Heavy thoughts for a Tuesday. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Come on, let's finish cleaning up. Dorothy wants to lock up by 1. They worked together and Thomas felt something he hadn't felt in years, belonging, purpose, a reason to show up tomorrow and the day after that. That evening back in Chicago, Michael asked how the session went. It went well, really well. Thomas sat on the hotel couch, exhausted but satisfied. The veterans opened up. Sarah was incredible to watch, and I think I actually helped someone today. That's good. That's the foundation you're building. But Michael, being there, hearing her talk about me like I'm some kind of hero she never got to know, it's killing me. Every word is a reminder of what I threw away. I know, but you're building something new now, brick by brick, session by session. Michael handed him a beer. How long do you think before you tell her? Thomas thought about Sarah's face when she talked about her father. The love there, but also the grief, the unanswered questions. I don't know. Not until I've proven I'm reliable. Not until the center is stable and she doesn't have to worry about losing it. Not until I'm sure I won't make her life worse by coming back into it. That could take months. Then it takes months. Thomas sipped the beer. I've already waited 15 years. I can wait a little longer to do this right. Pulled out the photograph, looking at his younger self holding Sarah and Patricia. That man had been full of hope and certainty. This man, Thomas Miller, peer counselor, volunteer, was full of fear and doubt, but he was showing up. He was trying, he was being present. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Maybe Sarah would see him not as the father who abandoned her, but as the man who came back. The man who never stopped loving her, even when he stopped believing he deserved to be loved back. Outside the window, Chicago glittered in the darkness, full of people living their complicated lives. And somewhere in Milwaukee, his daughter was doing the same, still working too hard, still grieving a father who was closer than she knew, still believing in second chances, not knowing one was sitting right in front of her, waiting for the right moment, building the courage, finding his way home, one careful step at a time. 6 weeks passed like a dream and a nightmare combined. Thomas drove to Milwaukee 3 days a week, volunteering at the center from morning until evening. He co-facilitated support groups with Sarah, helped veterans navigate VA paperwork, made coffee, stacked chairs, and listened to stories that mirrored his own. And every single day he lied to his daughter's face. "Good morning, Thomas," she'd say with that bright smile, and he'd respond, "Morning, Sarah," when what he wanted to say was, "Good morning, baby girl, it's Dad. I'm so sorry, I love you." But he didn't. He played his role. Thomas Miller, reliable volunteer, quiet veteran, steady presence. He showed up early and stayed late. He never missed a day. He proved slowly and steadily that he could be counted on. The center stabilized with Michael's anonymous donation, but financial pressure remained constant. Sarah worked herself ragged, hospital shifts, center management, fundraising, client care. Thomas watched her burn herself out and wanted to tell her to rest, to let him carry more, to stop trying to save everyone. But Thomas Miller didn't have that right. Only her father did, and her father was supposedly dead. Michael visited twice, always as a potential donor interested in the center's work. He and Sarah talked about expansion plans, sustainability, building community partnerships. She never recognized him as Michael Jordan. He dressed down, wore glasses, introduced himself as Michael Richards, a businessman interested in veteran causes. "She's brilliant," Michael told Thomas after one visit. "A natural leader, but she's going to collapse if she doesn't slow down." "I know, but what can I do? I'm just a volunteer." "You can be there when she does collapse, be the support she needs." Michael paused. "Have you thought more about when you'll tell her?" "Every day, every minute I'm around her." Thomas rubbed his face. "But the timing never feels right. She's stressed about money, stressed about the center. Adding your dead father is actually alive and has been lying to you for 2 months seems cruel." "Fair point. But Thomas, you can't wait forever. The longer this goes on, the worse the betrayal will feel when she finds out. Thomas knew that. The weight of the lie grew heavier each day. It was a Thursday in late January when everything started to change. Thomas arrived at the center at 9:30 for the 10 o'clock session. Sarah's car was already there, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that the door was locked and the lights were off. Thomas knocked, no answer. He peered through the window and saw Sarah slumped over her desk, head in her arms. His heart stopped. He pounded on the door. "Sarah, Sarah, open up." She stirred, lifted her head. Her face was pale, exhausted. She stumbled to the door and unlocked it. "Thomas, what time is it?" 9:30. "Are you okay? You look." "I'm fine, just fell asleep at my desk." She swayed slightly and Thomas caught her elbow. "When did you last eat?" Yesterday. Maybe." She pressed her hand to her forehead. "I had a double shift at the hospital, then came here to work on grant applications. Must have dozed off." Thomas guided her to a chair. "Sit, I'm making you breakfast." "Thomas, you don't have to." "Sit." His voice was firm, fatherly. She obeyed, too tired to argue. Thomas found bread, eggs, and cheese in the center's small kitchen, donations from a local grocery store. He made scrambled eggs and toast, brewed strong coffee, and brought it to Sarah. "Eat," he commanded. She took a bite, then another. The color slowly returned to her face. "Thank you, I didn't realize how hungry I was." Thomas sat across from her, watching her eat the way he used to watch her eat breakfast before school, making sure she had enough, making sure she was okay. "You're working too hard," he said gently. "I don't have a choice. The center needs me." "The center needs you healthy. You can't help anyone if you collapse." Sarah set down her fork. "You sound like my aunt. She's been telling me the same thing for months." "Then maybe you should listen." Thomas softened his voice. "Sarah, I've watched you for 6 weeks now. You're here every day running groups, managing operations, handling crises. Then you go to the hospital and work another 8 hours. When do you sleep? When do you rest?" "I'll rest when the center is stable." "And when will that be? Because from what I see, you're trying to build an empire on your own shoulders, and shoulders break, Sarah, even strong ones." She looked at him with those eyes, his eyes, and he saw tears forming. "I can't let it fail, Thomas, I can't. This center is all I have left of my father. If it closes, if I can't save it, then what was the point? What was the point of any of it?" The words broke Thomas's heart. She was carrying guilt that belonged to him, shouldering responsibility for his failures. "Your father wouldn't want this," Thomas said quietly. "Wouldn't want you destroying yourself trying to honor him. You didn't know him." "I know enough. I know he loved you more than anything. And if he could see you now working yourself to exhaustion, sacrificing your health and happiness for a building with his name on it, he'd be heartbroken." Sarah's tears spilled over. "Then where is he? If he loved me so much, where has he been for 20 years? Thomas wanted to say, "Right here, baby girl, I'm right here." But he couldn't. "Not yet, not like this." "I don't know," he said instead. "But I know carrying his memory shouldn't mean carrying his burden. You're not responsible for saving him or honoring him through suffering. You honor him by living well, by being happy, by taking care of yourself." Sarah wiped her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "Years of making mistakes." Thomas managed a sad smile. "I learned the hard way that martyrdom doesn't help anyone. It just creates more casualties." Before Sarah could respond, the door opened. Veterans started arriving for the session. Sarah quickly dried her face, put on her professional smile, and stood to greet them. But Thomas saw the cracks, saw how close she was to breaking. After the session ended, Thomas stayed to help clean up. Marcus and Dorothy had already left. Sarah was in her office, working on paperwork despite promising Thomas she'd go home and rest. Thomas knocked on her open door. "Need help with anything?" "Just finishing up grant applications. 3 more due by Friday." "Sarah, it's already Thursday afternoon. You need to rest." "I will, after these are done." She didn't look up from her computer. Thomas made a decision. "Then I'm staying until you're done. Someone needs to make sure you actually leave." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Thomas, you don't have to babysit me." "I'm not babysitting, I'm being a friend, or trying to be." He sat in the chair across from her desk. "Keep working, I'll wait." She studied him for a long moment, then shook her head with a small smile. You're stubborn. Takes one to know one. They worked in companionable silence, Sarah typing, Thomas reviewing program materials and making notes. At 6 o'clock, Sarah finally pushed back from her computer. Done. All 3 applications submitted. She stretched, her back cracking. Happy now. Ecstatic, now go home. Eat real food, sleep in a real bed. Yes, sir. She grabbed her coat. Thomas, thank you for caring, for staying. Not many people do that anymore. Your aunt? Aunt Margaret tries, but she's in Phoenix now. Retired there 2 years ago. We talk on the phone, but it's not the same as having someone here, you know. Thomas knew. Margaret had been Sarah's guardian, had raised her after he disappeared. He owed that woman a debt he could never repay. You have people here who care, Thomas said. Marcus, Dorothy, the volunteers, and me. We're not going anywhere. Sarah smiled, real warmth in it. I believe you. You've been the most consistent volunteer we've ever had. Haven't missed a single day. Don't plan to. They walked out together and Thomas waited while Sarah locked up. The January evening was cold and dark, snow threatening in the heavy clouds. Where are you parked? Sarah asked. Few blocks away. Actually, Michael was waiting around the corner, but Thomas couldn't say that. I'll drive you. Too cold to walk. Sarah, you don't. Get in the car, Thomas. I'm not taking no for an answer. She unlocked her old Honda Civic. See, I can be stubborn too. Thomas climbed in, his heart racing. This was unexpected, unplanned. Being in close quarters with Sarah alone felt dangerous, like he might slip, might say something that revealed too much. Sarah turned on the heat and pulled out of the parking spot. Which direction? Just that way, Thomas pointed vaguely. I'll tell you when to turn. They drove in silence for a moment. Then Sarah spoke. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you have kids? You never mentioned family. Thomas's chest tightened. I did, a daughter, lost touch with her years ago. How old? She'd be about your age now. Sarah glanced at him. Do you ever think about reaching out, trying to reconnect? Every day. Then why don't you? Because I don't know if she'd want to hear from me. I wasn't there when she needed me, made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stay away. Sarah pulled over abruptly, parking on a side street. She turned to face him in the dim light of the car. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, she said, her voice intense. Thomas, listen to me. If my father showed up tomorrow, broken, homeless, whatever condition he was in, I would take him back in a heartbeat. Do you understand? In a heartbeat. Because he's my father and I love him and nothing he did would change that. Thomas couldn't breathe. She was staring right at him, saying the words he'd needed to hear for 15 years. You don't know what he did, Thomas whispered. It doesn't matter. He could have done anything and I'd still want him back. I'd still want the chance to tell him I forgive him, that I understand that he didn't have to carry his shame alone. Tears were streaming down her face now. So whatever you think your daughter feels, whatever rejection you're afraid of, you're probably wrong. She probably just wants her father back. Thomas's own tears fell. What if she's better off without him? She's not. Trust me, she's not. Living with absence is worse than living with imperfection. Sarah grabbed his hand, her father's hand, and squeezed it. Call her, Thomas, today, tonight. Don't waste another day running from a forgiveness she's probably been waiting to give you. Thomas looked at their joined hands, father and daughter touching, connected, neither one knowing the truth. Maybe, he said, his voice breaking. Maybe I will. Sarah released his hand and wiped her face. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so emotional. Your situation it hits close to home. I know, it's okay. She started driving again and Thomas directed her to where Michael was parked several blocks away. She pulled up next to Michael's car. This is you? Sarah asked, looking at the expensive SUV. Friend's car, he lets me use it sometimes. The lie came easily now, too easily. Nice friend, Sarah smiled. See you next week. Tuesday, wouldn't miss it. Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand again. Think about what I said, okay? About your daughter. Life's too short for regrets. Thomas nodded, unable to speak. He got out of the car and watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the snowy night. Michael rolled down his window. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. She told me to call my daughter, Thomas said. still staring after Sarah's car. Told me she'd probably forgive me. That living with absence is worse than living with imperfection. She's talking about herself, you know, about what she wishes her father would do. I know. Thomas climbed into Michael's car. She's giving me permission, Michael, telling me it's okay to come back. If only she knew she was talking to me. Maybe it's time to tell her. Not yet. Not when she's this stressed, this fragile. I need to wait for the right moment. They drove back to Chicago, but Thomas couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's words, about the forgiveness she'd promised without knowing who she was promising it to. Over the next 2 weeks, Thomas threw himself into helping at the center. He took on more responsibilities, handling intake calls, organizing files, reaching out to potential donors. Anything to ease Sarah's burden. And slowly, the center began to stabilize. More volunteers came forward. 2 local veterans organizations partnered with them for programming. A small grant came through, enough to hire a part-time administrator. Sarah was still working too hard, but the panic in her eyes lessened. She smiled more, laughed at Marcus's terrible jokes, started talking about future plans instead of just surviving each day. In mid-February, Sarah called a staff meeting. Thomas, Marcus, Dorothy, and the new administrator gathered in the center's main room. I have news, Sarah said, practically glowing. Big news. Remember that anonymous donor who gave us $20,000 in December? Everyone nodded. They want to give more, a lot more, but they have a condition. Sarah's smile was radiant. They want us to host a charity basketball game, veterans versus local celebrities. All proceeds go to the center, and they're going to match whatever we raise dollar for dollar. That's amazing, Dorothy exclaimed. When? 6 weeks from now, March 30th. They've already secured the high school gymnasium, already have celebrities committed. Sarah looked directly at Thomas. And Thomas, they specifically requested that you be one of the team captains, you and one of the celebrity participants. Thomas's heart stopped. Me, why me? The donor said they heard about your work here, about how you've helped our veterans. They want you front and center, showing what peer counseling and lived experience can accomplish. Sarah grabbed his hands. Thomas, this could save the center, not just for months, but for years. Will you do it? Thomas looked at Sarah's hopeful face and knew there was only one answer. Of course, whatever you need. Sarah hugged him, quick and impulsive. Thank you so much. This is going to be incredible. That night, Thomas called Michael from his hotel room. A basketball game, Thomas asked. That was your idea. Seemed appropriate. Full circle moment, you playing basketball again, Sarah watching the community coming together. Michael's voice was warm. And Thomas, I'm going to be there, your co-captain. We're going to play together just like I suggested back in November. She's going to recognize you. Maybe, but I'll handle that. The important thing is getting people there, raising money, securing the center's future. Michael paused. This is your chance, Thomas. Your chance to show Sarah who you really are, not by telling her, but by showing her. By playing the game your daughter fell in love with watching you play. Thomas thought about 8-year-old Sarah in her oversized Bulls jersey, cheering for him in the driveway, about the joy basketball had brought them both. Okay, he said, let's do it. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Sarah worked tirelessly organizing the event, selling tickets, recruiting players, coordinating logistics. Thomas helped where he could while also preparing himself physically and mentally to play basketball for the first time in years. Michael arranged private practices at a Chicago gym. At first, Thomas could barely run up and down the court without gasping, but slowly muscle memory returned. His shot was rusty but not gone. His footwork improved. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. You still have it, Michael said after one practice. Buried deep, but it's there. Thomas made a layup, breathing hard. I'm 52 years old and I've been homeless for years. I'm not exactly in game shape. You're good enough, and that's what matters, showing Sarah that redemption is real, that people can come back from anything. The week before the game, Sarah seemed lighter than Thomas had ever seen her. Ticket sales exceeded expectations. Local news covered the story. The gymnasium would be packed. This is really happening, Sarah said, looking at Thomas with shining eyes. We're going to make it. The center is going to survive. "You did this," Thomas told her. "Your vision, your dedication, you never gave up." "We did it, all of us." She squeezed his arm. "I'm so glad you came to us, Thomas, so glad you didn't give up either." Thomas looked at his daughter, strong, successful, happy, and felt something shift inside him. Pride, yes, but also peace. Whatever happened when he revealed the truth, he'd helped her get here. He'd been part of saving what she'd built. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe she could forgive him. Maybe they could find their way back to each other. The night before the game, Thomas stood in his hotel room, looking at the photograph as he'd done 1,000 times before. But tomorrow, he wouldn't be looking at a photograph. Tomorrow, he'd be playing basketball while his daughter watched. Tomorrow, everything might change. He pulled out his phone and texted Michael, "Ready?" Michael's response came immediately, "Ready. Tomorrow we show her what second chances look like." Thomas set the phone down and tried to sleep. But all he could think about was Sarah's voice in the car that night. If my father showed up tomorrow, I would take him back in a heartbeat. Tomorrow, he'd find out if she meant it. Tomorrow, the lie would end. Tomorrow, he'd finally stop running and come home. One way or another, tomorrow would be the day Thomas Bennett came back from the dead, and he could only pray that Sarah would be ready to let him. The high school gymnasium buzzed with energy. Thomas stood in the makeshift locker room, actually just a classroom with desks pushed aside, trying to calm his racing heart. Through the walls, he could hear the crowd gathering. Hundreds of people, maybe more, all there to support the center, all there to watch him play. All there, though they didn't know it, to witness a father's return. Marcus poked his head in. "You okay, man? You look pale." "Just nervous. Haven't played in front of a crowd in decades." "You'll be fine. Sarah's out there making announcements. Place is packed." Marcus grinned. "This is really happening." After Marcus left, Thomas sat on a desk, head in his hands. His whole body trembled. In 20 minutes, he'd walk out onto that court. Sarah would see him play. And somehow, some way, the truth would come out. It had to. Michael had insisted. "No more waiting," he'd said. "No more lies. After the game, we tell her together." The door opened again. This time it was Michael, dressed in basketball gear that somehow made him look both like himself and like someone trying not to be recognized. Dark jersey, shorts, sneakers. But there was no hiding Michael Jordan, not really. "Big crowd," Michael said, sitting beside Thomas. "Sarah's over the moon. They've already sold more tickets than expected." "She's going to hate me." Thomas's voice was flat. "When she finds out I've been lying for 3 months, she's going to hate me." "Maybe, or maybe she'll understand why you did it." Michael put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "But Thomas, regardless of how she reacts, you need to do this. For her, yes, but also for you. You can't keep living as Thomas Miller. You need to reclaim your life, your name, your daughter." "What if I lose her again?" "Then at least you tried, at least you gave her the truth." Michael stood and extended his hand. "Come on, let's go warm up. Time to stop hiding." They walked through the hallways toward the gymnasium. The sound grew louder, voices, laughter, excitement. Thomas felt like he was walking toward his execution. The gym doors opened and Thomas stepped into chaos. The bleachers were full, people standing along the walls. A banner hung across one side. Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center Charity Game. Tables lined the entrance where volunteers sold raffle tickets and center merchandise. And there, at center court with a microphone, stood Sarah. She wore jeans and a center t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was explaining the rules of the game, thanking sponsors, introducing players. When she spotted Thomas and Michael entering, her face lit up. "And here they are, our team captains." She waved them over. "Come on, guys, don't be shy." The crowd applauded. Thomas walked onto the court, his legs moving automatically. Sarah grabbed his arm, pulling him close to the microphone. "This is Thomas Miller, one of our most dedicated volunteers and peer counselors. He's a Desert Storm veteran who's been instrumental in helping our clients find their path to recovery." Sarah's voice was full of pride. "Thomas, want to say a few words?" Thomas took the microphone with shaking hands. 1,000 faces looked at him, and in the front row he saw veterans from the center, men and women he'd counseled, listened to, helped. They smiled at him, gave him thumbs up, encouraged him. Thomas cleared his throat. "I'm not good at speeches, but I want to thank everyone for coming. This center means everything to the veterans it serves. It saved my life, honestly. Gave me purpose when I thought I had none left. So thank you for supporting it. Thank you for believing that broken people deserve second chances." The crowd applauded again. Sarah squeezed his arm, beaming. Then she turned to Michael. "And this is Michael Richards," she said it as a question, squinting at him. "Wait, are you?" Michael pulled off his cap and smiled. "Michael Jordan. Sorry for the fake name earlier. Wanted to assess the center without the circus that follows me." Sarah's mouth fell open. The crowd erupted. People were standing, pointing, shouting Michael's name. Sarah looked between Michael and Thomas, shocked. "You knew," she asked Thomas. "You knew Michael Jordan was the anonymous donor?" Yes, he asked me to keep it quiet." "This whole time?" Sarah was stunned but not angry. "The visits, the questions, the donation, that was you." Michael nodded. "Your center impressed me, your mission, your dedication. But more than that, Thomas impressed me. When I met him, I saw someone genuinely trying to change lives. I wanted to support that." Sarah looked at Thomas with new eyes. "You brought Michael Jordan to our center." "Not exactly," Thomas said, uncomfortable with the attention. "We just crossed paths." "However it happened, thank you." Sarah hugged Michael quickly, then hugged Thomas longer. "Both of you, this is incredible." The game started after more introductions. The other team consisted of local celebrities, news anchors, radio hosts, a city councilman, and a few former college basketball players. Thomas's team had Michael, Marcus, 2 other veterans from the center, and 3 community volunteers. The first quarter was rough. Thomas's body protested every move. His legs felt heavy, his lungs burned. He missed his first 3 shots, airballing one so badly that the crowd groaned sympathetically. But Michael kept feeding him the ball, kept encouraging him. "You've got this, muscle memory, let it come back." Midway through the second quarter, something clicked. Thomas caught a pass, pivoted, and shot without thinking. The ball arced beautifully and swished through the net. The crowd exploded. Thomas stared at the hoop, stunned. He'd made a basket. After all these years, he'd actually made a basket. Sarah was on her feet in the front row, screaming and clapping. Her joy was pure, unshadowed. Thomas looked at her and felt tears sting his eyes. "There it is," Michael yelled, running past and slapping his back. "There's the player I remember." The game became a blur after that. Thomas made a few more shots, had several assists, even pulled down a rebound. His team was losing, the celebrities were younger and in better shape, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that Thomas was playing, really playing, feeling alive in his body for the first time in years. At halftime, Sarah ran onto the court with water bottles. She handed one to Thomas, her face flushed with excitement. "You're amazing, that three-pointer, beautiful." She was bouncing on her toes like a little kid. "I had no idea you could play like this." "Used to be better," Thomas said, breathing hard. "You're perfect." She hugged him impulsively. "Thank you for doing this, for everything." Thomas held his daughter for just a second, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. Then the referee called them back for the second half. The third quarter, Thomas's exhaustion caught up with him. He could barely run. Michael noticed and called a timeout. "You okay? Need to sit out." "No, I can finish." Thomas gulped water. "I have to finish." "Why, this is just for fun." "Because she's watching," Thomas said quietly, looking at Sarah on the sideline. "And I need her to see me not quit, not run, even when it's hard." Michael understood. "Okay, but pace yourself. We don't need heroics." The fourth quarter began and Thomas forced his body to cooperate. Each step hurt. Each breath was labor. But he stayed in, kept playing, kept trying. With 2 minutes left, Marcus passed Thomas the ball. Thomas was at the three-point line, exhausted, every muscle screaming. The defender gave him space, probably thinking he was too tired to shoot. Thomas looked at Sarah in the stands. She was watching him intently, hands clasped together. He thought about the 8-year-old in the Bulls jersey. The 13-year-old he'd terrified with his nightmare. The 15-year-old he'd abandoned. The 23-year-old woman who'd built something beautiful from her pain. Thomas shot the ball. Time seemed to slow. The ball arced high, spinning perfectly. The crowd held its breath, swish. The gymnasium erupted. Sarah jumped up and down, screaming his name. The veterans from the center rushed onto the court, surrounding Thomas. Michael was laughing, pulling Thomas into a hug. "That's my boy," Michael yelled over the noise. "That's the shot." The final buzzer sounded. Thomas's team lost by 12 points, but no one cared. The crowd gave both teams a standing ovation. Sarah ran onto the court, fighting through people to get to Thomas. She threw her arms around him. "That was incredible. Thomas, you were incredible." Thomas held her, this daughter who didn't know she was hugging her father. "Thank you for letting me play." "Are you kidding? Thank you for playing. You inspired everyone here." She pulled back, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "You showed them that it's never too late to come back, never too late to be who you were meant to be." The words hit Thomas like a physical force. Never too late to come back, never too late to be who you were meant to be. Sarah was called away to make closing remarks, to thank sponsors and announce fundraising totals. Thomas stood on the court, surrounded by celebrating people, and felt Michael's hand on his shoulder. "Now," Michael said quietly, "we tell her now while she's happy, before you lose your nerve." "I can't, not here, not in front of all these people." "Then we get her somewhere private." "But Thomas, we're doing this today, no more delays." Thomas nodded, terror and relief mixing in his chest. "Okay, today." Sarah's voice boomed through the speakers. "And I'm thrilled to announce that tonight's event raised $47,000 for the center." The crowd roared. Sarah continued, "And thanks to our anonymous donors' matching pledge, that means $94,000 total. The Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center is saved." More cheering. Thomas watched Sarah's face transform with joy and relief. She'd done it. She'd saved the center, saved her father's legacy, proven that second chances were real. Now he had to prove it too. After the ceremony, after the crowd dispersed and the volunteers cleaned up, Sarah found Thomas sitting alone in the bleachers. "Hey, you okay? You disappeared after the speeches." "Just needed a minute, lot of emotions." Thomas looked at her. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "Of course, my office." They walked through the now quiet gymnasium, their footsteps echoing. Michael caught Thomas's eye and nodded. He'd be waiting outside when it was time. In Sarah's small office, she closed the door and sat across from Thomas. "What's wrong? You look upset. Did something happen during the game?" "No, the game was perfect. It's just..." Thomas pulled out the photograph from his pocket, the one he'd carried for 15 years. "I need to show you something." He handed it to Sarah. She took it, confused, then looked down at the image. Thomas watched her face, watched recognition flicker, watched her look at the 8-year-old girl in the Bulls jersey, then at the woman holding her, then at the man with his arms around both of them. "This is..." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "This is me. This is my mom. This is..." She looked up at Thomas, her face pale. "Where did you get this?" "I've carried it every day for 15 years. Thomas's voice shook. "Even when I had nothing else, I had this picture." Sarah stared at him. He watched her mind work, watched her try to make sense of what he was saying. Her eyes moved from the photograph to his face, comparing, searching. "No," she said. "No, that's not possible." "Sarah, you can't be, you're not." Her hands trembled, holding the photograph. "My father is dead or gone, or you're not him, you can't be him." Thomas stood slowly, giving her space to process. "I'm Thomas Bennett, Sergeant, 3rd Armored Division, Desert Storm, married to Patricia Chen, June 12, 1994, father to Sarah Michelle Bennett, born March 15, 1995. His voice cracked. "I taught you to ride a bike in the driveway. I read you Goodnight Moon every night for 2 years until you had it memorized. I took you to see Michael Jordan play for your 8th birthday, and you wore a jersey so big it looked like a dress." Sarah's face crumpled. No, you left. You disappeared. You're not." "I'm your father, Sarah. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry." The photograph fell from Sarah's hands. She stood, backing away from him like he was dangerous. "You've been here for 3 months, 3 months." Her voice rose, shaking with emotion. "You've been lying to me, every day, every conversation. You let me talk about you like you were dead, and you just sat there lying." "I know, I was wrong, I was scared." "Scared?" Sarah's face flushed red. "You were scared. I've been scared for 20 years. Scared you were dead, scared you were suffering, scared I'd never see you again." Tears streamed down her face. "And you were here the whole time, watching me, lying. I didn't know how to tell you, didn't know if you'd want to see me. So you made that choice for me. Again." Sarah's voice broke. "You left when I was 15, you abandoned me, and then you came back and lied to my face for months. Who does that? What kind of person does that?" "A coward," Thomas said, tears falling. A coward who didn't deserve you then and doesn't deserve you now. But Sarah, please, I came back, I'm here, I'm trying. You're trying, she laughed bitterly. You're trying. I built a center in your name. I named my life's work after a man I thought was gone. I told everyone you were a hero, and all this time you were just... What? Testing me, watching to see if I was worth coming back to. No, never that. I was trying to prove I could be reliable, that I could be trusted. By lying, that's how you prove you can be trusted. Sarah wiped her face angrily. Get out. Sarah, please. Get out, she pointed at the door. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear your excuses. You left me twice, Dad, twice. And I'm done. I'm done hoping, done waiting, done forgiving. Just go. Thomas stood frozen. This was the moment he'd feared, the rejection he'd known was possible. But hearing it, seeing the pain and anger on Sarah's face was worse than anything he'd imagined. I love you, he whispered. I never stopped loving you. Then you have a terrible way of showing it. Sarah's voice was cold now, the tears still falling but her face hard. Leave, before I call security. Thomas walked to the door, each step feeling like his legs might give out. He paused at the threshold, looking back at his daughter one more time. I'm sorry, baby girl, for all of it. I'm so sorry. Sarah turned away, facing the wall. Goodbye, Thomas, or whoever you are. Thomas walked out, closing the door gently behind him. In the gymnasium, Michael was waiting. How did it go? Michael asked, then saw Thomas's face. Oh, Thomas. She hates me. Thomas's voice was hollow. She told me to leave and never come back. Give her time. She's in shock. She's hurt. She's done. She said it twice. She's done. Thomas walked toward the exit, numb. I ruined everything, just like I always do. They stepped outside into the cold March evening. The parking lot was nearly empty, the celebration over. In the distance, Thomas could see the center's sign, illuminated against the dark sky. The Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center, named for a hero who was actually a coward, named for a father who'd failed everyone he loved. Michael drove them back to Chicago in silence. Thomas stared out the window, seeing nothing, feeling nothing except the crushing weight of final, absolute failure. At the hotel, Michael walked Thomas to his room. Don't give up on this. Give her time to process. I'm done, Michael. I should never have come back. Should have stayed in that alley where I belonged. Thomas, don't. Thank you for trying to help me. Thank you for believing in me, but Sarah was right. Some distances can't be crossed. Some mistakes are unforgivable. Thomas opened his hotel room door. I'm going back to Chicago permanently. Back to my real life. Thomas Miller can disappear just like Thomas Bennett did. You can't run again. Watch me. Thomas closed the door, leaving Michael in the hallway. Inside the room, he sat on the bed and finally let himself break completely. Great, gasping sobs that shook his entire body. He'd been so close to having his daughter back, to being part of her life, to making amends. And he'd destroyed it all by doing the one thing he promised never to do again. He'd lied. He'd hidden. He'd taken away her choice, just like before. Thomas pulled out the photograph. Sarah had dropped it and he'd picked it up on his way out. He looked at the three happy faces, the family that had been destroyed by war and grief and his own weakness. I'm sorry, he whispered to the image of Patricia. I tried, I really tried, but I'm just not strong enough. He set the photograph on the nightstand and lay down, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he'd figure out what came next. Where to go, how to disappear again, how to live with having hurt Sarah one final, unforgivable time. But tonight, he just lay in the darkness, mourning the daughter he'd found and lost in the same breath. Mourning the man he could have been if he'd just been braver, stronger, better. Mourning the second chance he'd wasted by being too afraid to ask for it honestly. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Chicago in white. Inside, Thomas Bennett closed his eyes and wished he'd never woken up in that alley. Wished Michael Jordan had just kept walking. Wished he'd stayed dead to the world, because being dead had hurt less than this. Being dead had hurt so much less than watching his daughter look at him with hatred and telling him goodbye. In Milwaukee, Sarah sat alone in her office, holding a photograph of a family that no longer existed, and crying for the father who'd come back from the dead only to break her heart one more time. Sarah sat in her office for hours after Thomas left, the photograph clutched in her hands. The faces stared back at her, her mother's smile, her own gap-toothed grin, and her father's arms wrapped around them both like he could protect them from anything. But he hadn't protected them. He'd left. And then he'd come back pretending to be someone else. Her phone buzzed. Aunt Margaret calling for the third time. Sarah finally answered. "Sarah, honey, I've been trying to reach you for hours. How did the fundraiser go?" "It went well. We raised enough money to save the center." Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless. "That's wonderful. You must be so relieved, Sarah. What's wrong?" Sarah started crying again, unable to hold it in. "He was here, Aunt Margaret. Dad was here. He's been here for 3 months and I didn't know." Silence on the other end. "Then, what did you say?" "Dad, Thomas Bennett, my father. He's alive and he's been volunteering at my center since January using a fake name, and I just found out tonight and The words tumbled out in a rush. "I told him to leave. I told him I was done. I sent my father away and now I don't know what to do." "Oh, honey, oh, Sarah." Margaret's voice was thick with emotion. "Start from the beginning, tell me everything." Sarah told her about Thomas Miller, the quiet volunteer who'd been so reliable, so helpful, about how he'd understood the veterans in a way no one else did, about how he'd helped her, supported her, been there when she was exhausted and overwhelmed, and then about the photograph, the revelation, the lies. "He lied to me for 3 months, Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Every day, every conversation. How am I supposed to trust him after that?" Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember when you were 5 years old and your father took you to the zoo?" "What, Aunt Margaret, I don't." "Just listen. You were 5 and you wanted to see the lions. Your father carried you on his shoulders through the entire zoo because you were too tired to walk. And when you finally got to the lions, they were sleeping. You cried and cried because you'd waited so long and they weren't doing anything interesting." Sarah remembered vaguely. "What does this have to?" "Your father went back the next weekend. Just him and you. Spent 3 hours waiting until the lions woke up and started moving around. He didn't tell you he was planning this. He just showed up at my house, picked you up, and took you back to make it right." "I don't understand what you're saying." "I'm saying your father has always been the kind of man who tries to fix his mistakes, who shows up instead of just apologizing. He's flawed, Sarah. God knows he's flawed. But he came back. After 20 years of running, he finally came back. By lying to me. By being too afraid to lose you again." Margaret's voice was gentle. "Honey, I'm not saying what he did was right. It wasn't. But try to understand where he was coming from. He abandoned you once and destroyed both of your lives. He probably thought showing up and saying, 'Hi, I'm your dad who left you,' would make you hate him. So he tried to earn his way back first. That's not his choice to make." "No, it's not. But scared people don't make good choices. Hurt people don't make good choices. And your father has been both scared and hurt for a very long time." Sarah wiped her face. "I named this entire center after him, built my whole life around honoring him, and he watched me do it while lying about who he was. How is that okay?" "It's not okay, it's terrible. But Sarah, answer me this. Did Thomas Miller, did your father help you? Was he a good volunteer? Did he make the center better?" Sarah thought about the past 3 months, about Thomas's steady presence, his quiet support, the way he'd made her eat when she'd forgotten, the way he'd stayed late to help with paperwork, the way veterans responded to him, trusted him, opened up to him. "Yes," she admitted quietly, "he was the best volunteer we've ever had." "And did he seem like he was trying, really trying to be better?" Sarah remembered Thomas's face during the basketball game, the determination and exhaustion, the way he'd pushed through pain to keep playing, the way he'd looked at her with such love and pride when she'd announced the fundraising total. Yes, he tried. Then maybe, just maybe, he deserves a chance to explain himself. Not today, you're too angry, too hurt, but someday. Margaret paused. Your father made terrible mistakes, Sarah. He left you when you needed him most, but he came back. And in his broken, flawed way, he tried to make amends. That has to count for something. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the darkness of her office. The center was silent around her, empty of the veterans who'd filled it just hours ago. The banner still hung in the gymnasium, Thomas Bennett Veteran Recovery Center. She looked at the photograph again, really looked at it. At the man her father had been, young, healthy, whole. Then she thought about Thomas Miller, older, weathered, carrying decades of pain in his eyes, the same eyes. She'd seen it but hadn't recognized it. Or maybe some part of her had recognized it but hadn't wanted to believe. She pulled out her laptop and opened a document she'd started years ago but never finished. A letter to her father wherever he was. She read through it, tears falling on the keyboard. Dear Dad, I'm 23 now. I don't know if you're alive to read this. I don't know if you're out there somewhere thinking about me the way I think about you. I want you to know that I forgive you. I forgave you a long time ago for leaving. Mom's death broke all of us, and I understand that you couldn't handle it. I understand that the PTSD and the drinking made you someone you didn't want to be. I just wish you'd come back. I wish you'd let me tell you that I don't care what you've become. You're still my dad. You'll always be my dad. I built something in your name. A place where veterans like you can find help, can find hope. Every person I help, I'm helping for you. Every life I save, I'm saving the father I couldn't save. If you're reading this, please know you're not too broken to come home. You're not too lost to be found. And I'm still here, still waiting, still loving you. Your daughter, Sarah. She'd written it 3 years ago when she opened the center. Never sent it because she didn't have an address, didn't know if he'd ever see it. But he had come home, and she'd sent him away. Sarah closed her laptop and walked through the center. She stopped at the wall of photographs, success stories of veterans who'd found their way through the program. Men and women who'd been homeless, addicted, broken, who'd put in the work and rebuilt their lives. One photo showed Marcus before and after. Before, gaunt, desperate, living in a tent. After, healthy, employed, smiling with his daughter he'd reconnected with. Another showed Dorothy's son who'd gone through the program 2 years ago. Before, angry, isolated, pushing everyone away. After, married, working as a counselor himself, giving back. Second chances. That's what this center was built on. The belief that no one was too broken, too lost, too far gone to come back. So why couldn't she give that same chance to her own father? Sarah pulled out her phone and stared at it. She didn't have Thomas Miller's number, or did she? She checked the volunteer contact list and found it, probably the number Michael Jordan had set up for him. Her thumb hovered over the call button. What would she even say? I'm still angry, but come back. You broke my heart, but I miss you. I don't know how to forgive you, but I want to try. She set down the phone. Not tonight. Tonight she was still too raw, too confused. But maybe tomorrow. Or the day after, maybe someday soon. In Chicago, Thomas woke at dawn after not really sleeping. His body ached from the basketball game, but that pain was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. He packed his few belongings into the duffel bag Michael had bought him months ago. Time to disappear again. Time to find another city, another alley, another way to be invisible. A knock at the door interrupted his packing. Michael stood in the hallway holding 2 cups of coffee. Figured you'd be up. Michael entered without waiting for an invitation. Drink this. I'm leaving today. I know, that's why I'm here. Michael sat on the bed. To try to stop you from making another massive mistake. The mistake was coming back in the first place. No, the mistake was lying, but running again, that's an even bigger mistake. Michael sipped his coffee. You know what Sarah needs right now? For me to stay away. She needs time and space to process. She needs to work through her anger, and then when she's ready, she needs to know where to find you. Michael looked at Thomas steadily. If you disappear now, you're making the same choice you made 15 years ago. You're deciding for her, taking away her option to reconnect when she's ready. She told me she was done. She was angry. She just found out her dead father had been lying to her for months. Of course, she said things in the heat of the moment. Michael set down his coffee. But Thomas, she built a center in your name. She dedicated her life to helping people like you. That doesn't sound like someone who actually hates her father. That sounds like someone who loves him desperately and doesn't know how to process that love. Thomas wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe Sarah's anger wasn't permanent. What am I supposed to do? Just sit here and wait? Yes, you stay in Chicago. You get proper housing, I'll help with that. You continue working on yourself, maybe find a job, build a real life. And you let Sarah know you're here if she ever wants to reach out. Michael pulled out his phone. I'm going to talk to her. Not today, give her a few days. But I'm going to tell her your side of the story. Help her understand why you did what you did. She won't care. She will, maybe not immediately, but she will. Michael stood. Trust me on this. I've seen her work with veterans. I've seen how she believes in redemption and second chances. She just needs time to see you as one of the people who deserves that redemption." Thomas wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. "Fine, I'll stay in Chicago, but I'm not making any promises. That's all I'm asking." Over the next week, Michael found Thomas a small studio apartment on Chicago's South Side. It was modest but clean, and it was his. Really his, with his name, Thomas Bennett, on the lease. "No more hiding," Michael said as he helped Thomas move in. "No more fake names. You're reclaiming your identity." Michael also connected Thomas with a job, maintenance work at a community center that served veterans. The pay was modest but honest, and the work was meaningful. "You're starting over the right way this time," Michael told him, "building something real." Thomas threw himself into work. He fixed broken toilets, painted walls, repaired basketball hoops. At night, he attended AA meetings and PTSD support groups. He was doing everything right, checking every box, but he felt hollow, empty, like he was going through motions without purpose, because the purpose, Sarah, was gone. 2 weeks after the basketball game, Michael called. "I talked to Sarah today." Thomas's heart leaped. "What did she say?" "She's still processing, still angry, but she asked about you, asked if you were okay, where you were, what you were doing." Michael paused. "She didn't say she wanted to see you, but she asked. That's something." It was something, a tiny crack in the wall Sarah had built. "Did you tell her where I am?" "I told her you're in Chicago, that you're working and getting help. I gave her your number in case she ever wants to reach out." Michael's voice softened. "Thomas, I can't make this happen faster. She needs to come to this in her own time." "I know, thank you for trying." Another week passed, then another. Thomas went to work, attended meetings, lived his quiet life. His phone never rang with Sarah's number, but Michael sent him updates, small things. Sarah had mentioned him at a staff meeting, asking if they needed to find a replacement volunteer. Marcus had defended Thomas, saying he'd been a good man regardless of the lies. Sarah had apparently gotten quiet and changed the subject. Progress. Maybe. Or maybe just wounds that hadn't healed yet. 6 weeks after the basketball game, Thomas came home from work to find an envelope taped to his door. His name, Thomas Bennett, was written on the front in handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a letter. "Thomas, Michael gave me your address. I'm not ready to see you yet. I don't know when I'll be ready, but I need to say some things, and writing feels safer than calling. I'm still angry. I'm angry you left 20 years ago. I'm angry you lied for 3 months. I'm angry you took away my choice to decide whether to forgive you. But I'm also confused, because the man I knew as Thomas Miller was good. He helped my veterans. He supported me when I was drowning. He showed up every single day and never let me down, and I can't reconcile that man with the father who abandoned me. Aunt Margaret says they're the same person, that you're both the man who left and the man who came back. I'm trying to understand that, trying to see you as human instead of just as the father who failed me. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I'm trying, and I thought you should know that. The center is doing well. The fundraiser gave us breathing room, and we're starting to get more community support. Marcus asks about you sometimes. So do some of the veterans. I tell them you had to leave for personal reasons. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what I want from this letter or from you. Maybe I just needed you to know that I'm still here, still thinking about you, still trying to figure out what it means that you came back. Sarah." Thomas read the letter 5 times, tears streaming down his face. She was thinking about him, still trying, not ready to see him, but not writing him off entirely either. It was more than he deserved. He wrote back that same night. "Sarah, thank you for your letter. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. You're right to be angry. You have every right to never forgive me. What I did, both 20 years ago and 3 months ago, was inexcusable. I took away your choices because I was too scared to face the consequences of my actions. I can't undo that. I can't go back and make different choices. All I can do is tell you the truth now and hope that someday it matters. The truth is, I left because I thought you'd be better off without me. I was broken, dangerous, a nightmare wrapped in your father's skin. When I saw fear in your eyes that night, I couldn't bear it. I thought disappearing was protecting you. I was wrong. I know that now. You needed a father, even a broken one. You needed to know I loved you even when I couldn't be what you deserved. And when I came back and couldn't tell you who I was, it was the same cowardice, the same fear of rejection. I thought if I proved myself first, earned your respect as Thomas Miller, maybe you'd be willing to hear Thomas Bennett's apology. I was wrong about that too. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that every day I was gone, you were in my heart, every single day. And watching you build something so beautiful, so meaningful from the wreckage I left behind, it was the proudest and most heartbroken I've ever been. You became everything I hoped you'd become. Strong, compassionate, dedicated to helping others. You're so much better than I ever was. I'm in Chicago, working and trying to build a real life. I'm here if you ever want to reach out. If you never do, I'll understand, but I'll be here. No more running. No more hiding. I love you, Sarah. I never stopped. Dad. He mailed the letter and waited. Days turned into weeks. Spring arrived, melting the last of winter's snow. Thomas kept working, kept attending meetings, kept living his quiet life. And then on a Tuesday in late April, his phone rang. Unknown number. Thomas answered. Hello. It's me, Sarah's voice quiet and uncertain. It's Sarah. Thomas sat down heavily, his legs suddenly weak. Sarah, hi. Hi, the pause. I got your letter. I meant every word. I think I know. Another pause. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about why you left and why you lied, and I think I'm starting to understand. You don't have to understand, you just have to. Let me finish. Sarah's voice was stronger now. I'm starting to understand, but I'm still hurt, still angry, and I need you to know that if we're going to try this, try to be father and daughter again, it's going to take time, a lot of time. I have time, however much you need. And I need you to promise me something. No more lies, no more deciding what's best for me. If we do this, we do it honestly, even when the truth is hard. I promise no more lies. Sarah was quiet for so long Thomas thought she'd hung up. Then, there's a coffee shop near the center, Molly's Cafe. Do you know it? I can find it. This Saturday, 10 in the morning, just coffee, just talking, nothing more. Her voice wavered. I can't promise I won't get angry, can't promise I'll be ready to forgive you, but I'm willing to try, to sit across from you and try. Thomas couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Finally, I'll be there. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. We haven't even started the hard part. A pause. See you Saturday, Dad. She hung up. Thomas sat holding his phone, staring at it like it might disappear. Dad, she'd called him Dad. Saturday morning, Thomas woke before dawn. He'd barely slept, too nervous about the meeting. He showered, shaved carefully, dressed in his best clothes, still modest but clean and presentable. Michael called as Thomas was leaving. Today's the day. Today's the day. You've got this, just be honest, be yourself. Don't try to fix everything at once. What if she changes her mind? What if she gets there and can't go through with it? Then you respect that and wait for her to be ready. Michael's voice was warm. But Thomas, I don't think she'll change her mind. I think she's wanted this as much as you have. She just needed time to admit it. Thomas drove to Milwaukee, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. The city looked different in spring, green instead of white, alive instead of sleeping. He found Molly's Cafe easily, a small shop near the center with outdoor seating and flowers in window boxes. He parked and waited. 10 o'clock came and went. Thomas's heart sank. She changed her mind. She wasn't coming. Then at 10:07, Sarah's car pulled up. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before getting out. She looked tired but beautiful. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair down around her shoulders. She saw Thomas's car and their eyes met through the windshields. Neither moved for a moment. Then Sarah got out of her car and walked toward the cafe. Thomas met her at the entrance. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Sarah's eyes were red like she'd been crying. "I almost didn't come." "I'm glad you did." They went inside and ordered coffee, found a table in the corner away from other customers, sat across from each other with cups between them like shields. Sarah spoke first. "I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to be your daughter after 20 years of not being your daughter." "I don't know either, but maybe we can figure it out together." She nodded slowly, then looked up at him with those eyes, his eyes. "Tell me about the last 20 years, all of it. I need to understand what happened, where you've been, how you survived." So Thomas told her everything. The years on the street, the struggles with PTSD and alcohol, the shame that kept him away. Meeting Michael Jordan in the alley, the decision to come to Milwaukee, the lie that became Thomas Miller. Sarah listened without interrupting, her face cycling through emotions, sadness, anger, understanding, pain. When he finished, she was crying silently. You were homeless. You were on the street while I was building a center to help homeless veterans. The universe has a dark sense of humor. It's not funny, but the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Okay, it's a little funny, in a terrible, cosmic irony kind of way. They sat in silence, drinking their coffee. Then Sarah spoke again. I need you to know something about why I built the center, why I named it after you. You don't have to explain. Yes, I do, Sarah leaned forward. When you left, when you disappeared, I was so angry. At you, at God, at the world. I felt abandoned and forgotten, and that anger ate me alive for years. Thomas started to speak, but she held up her hand. But then I went to college and studied social work, and I learned about trauma, about PTSD, about how war damages people in ways that don't show up on X-rays, and I realized you weren't a villain, you were a victim. Sarah, so I built the center, not just for you, but for all the fathers and mothers and sons and daughters who came home broken. I wanted to create what you never had, a place to heal, to be understood, to find your way back. She wiped her eyes. And when you showed up as Thomas Miller and you were everything I'd hoped my father could be, reliable, compassionate, present, it felt like the universe was mocking me. Like I'd conjured the father I wanted, but couldn't have him because he was pretending to be someone else. I'm so sorry. I know you are, and I'm sorry too, for sending you away so quickly, for not giving you a chance to explain. Sarah reached across the table, stopping just short of touching his hand. But Dad, if we're going to try this, you need to understand something. I'm not that little girl anymore. I'm not going to worship you or see you as a hero. I'm going to see you as a flawed man who made terrible choices and is trying to make better ones. That's fair, that's more than fair. And I'm going to need time. Time to trust you again. Time to let go of the anger. Time to figure out what it means to have a father after spending half my life without one. However much time you need. Sarah finally closed the distance, putting her hand over his. But I want to try. I want to know you. Not the memory of you, not the version I built up in my head, but the real you. Thomas Bennett, flawed and broken and trying. Thomas held his daughter's hand and felt something break open in his chest. Not pain this time, release. The weight he'd carried for 20 years finally lifting. I want that too, he whispered, more than anything. They sat in Molly's cafe until noon talking. Not about the past, not yet, about small things. Sarah's work, Thomas's new apartment, books they'd read, music they liked. Getting to know each other as strangers who were learning to be family again. When they finally left, Sarah hugged him, quick and tentative but real. Same time next week, she asked. I'll be here. And Dad, she looked up at him. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for coming back even though you were scared. That took more courage than I gave you credit for. Thomas watched her drive away, his heart fuller than it had been in decades. It wasn't forgiveness yet, wasn't absolution, but it was a start. A real start, built on truth instead of lies, on choice instead of running. He pulled out his phone and called Michael. How did it go? Michael asked immediately. It went well, really well. We're meeting again next week. Thomas, I'm proud of you, so damn proud. I couldn't have done it without you, any of it. Thomas looked at the cafe, at the place where he and Sarah had begun rebuilding their relationship. Thank you for stopping that night, for seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me a reason to believe I could be more than I'd become. You did the work, Thomas. I just showed up and reminded you who you were. That evening, Thomas returned to his Chicago apartment. On his small table was the photograph, Sarah, Patricia, and his younger self, all smiling at a future they'd thought would be simple. Life hadn't been simple. It had been brutal and complicated and full of mistakes. But looking at that photograph now, Thomas felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope. Hope that second chances were real. That broken didn't mean worthless, that it was never too late to come home. He thought about 8-year-old Sarah in her Bulls jersey, and 23-year-old Sarah building a center, and 35-year-old Sarah sitting across from him in a coffee shop, choosing to try. He thought about Michael Jordan finding him in that alley, refusing to walk past, believing he mattered enough to save. And he thought about what Sarah had said in the group session all those months ago, before he'd revealed himself. They don't need you to be heroes, they just need you to be there. Thomas had come back, he was there. And slowly, carefully, honestly, he was building a relationship with his daughter, not the father he'd been, not the hero she'd imagined. Just a man who'd fallen far and climbed back up, who'd run away and found the courage to return, who'd lied but was learning to tell the truth. Just a man trying to be present, to show up, to be there. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Maybe that was what beautiful really meant, not perfection, not grand gestures. The quiet daily work of showing up, of choosing connection over comfort, of loving someone enough to give them the truth even when the truth was ugly. Thomas put the photograph back on the table and smiled. Tomorrow he'd go to work. Next Saturday he'd see Sarah again. And day by day, week by week, they'd build something new from the ruins of what they'd lost. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks and arguments and moments when the past felt too heavy to carry forward. But they'd keep trying. Keep showing up, keep being there for each other. And in the end, that was all that mattered. That was what Michael Jordan had done when he'd encountered a homeless veteran in a Chicago alley and chosen to stop, to see, to care. He'd shown up. And in showing up, he'd saved a life. 2 lives, actually. A father's and a daughter's. And the beautiful thing, the truly beautiful thing, was that the saving hadn't come from money or fame or grand gestures. It had come from something simple. One person refusing to walk past another person's pain. One person saying, "I see you. You matter. Let me help." And that changed everything. 6 months later, Thomas and Sarah sat on a bench outside the center, watching veterans play basketball on the newly restored court. The court Michael had funded as part of a larger renovation. The court where Thomas now coached twice a week, teaching young veterans the game he loved. "You know what I realized," Sarah said, watching the players. "You kept your promise." "What promise?" "You said you'd come back when you were better, when you were ready." She looked at him. "You weren't better when you came back. You were still struggling, still broken, but you were ready, ready to try, ready to show up even though it was scary." Thomas thought about that. "I guess I was." That's the real lesson, isn't it? Not that we have to be perfect before we deserve love, but that we have to be willing to show up imperfect and do the work anyway. When did you get so wise? Had a good teacher. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Even if he did lie to me for 3 months. I'm never living that down, am I?" "Not a chance." They sat in comfortable silence, father and daughter, watching the sun set over Milwaukee. "Hey, Dad," Sarah said quietly. "Yeah. I forgive you for all of it. I forgive you." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, baby girl." "And Dad, I love you. I always did. Even when I was angry, even when I thought you were gone, I never stopped loving you." Thomas wrapped his arm around his daughter, holding her close. "I love you too, so much. And I promise no more running, no more hiding. I'm here for good." Good, because the center's board wants to offer you a job, paid position, Director of Peer Counseling Services. Thomas pulled back to look at her. "Sarah, I can't." "You can. You've more than earned it. And besides, I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands what our clients are going through. Someone who won't run when things get hard." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she smiled. "Welcome home, Dad, really truly home." And in that moment, sitting with his daughter as the last light faded, Thomas finally understood what Michael Jordan had given him that cold November night. Not money, not charity, not pity, but something far more valuable, the chance to believe he could be more than his worst moment. The opportunity to prove that coming back was always possible no matter how far you'd fallen, the gift of hope. And sometimes, Thomas realized, hope was the most beautiful thing in the world. The end. So that's the beautiful story of how Michael Jordan helped Thomas Bennett find his way home. A reminder that it's never too late for second chances, and that one act of kindness can change everything. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. By subscribing, you're helping us spread more stories of hope and kindness to people who need to hear them. And don't go anywhere yet. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story that will inspire you. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's never too late to show up for someone who needs you.